Chapter 801 The Great Disaster of the Ancient Era. Lu Chen, who was in Xiang world, already knew that Yun Qingshu had gone to see Yun Xianxian, and also knew that Yun Qingshu had left Tianchen world. After Yun Qingshu left, Lu Chen's puppet appeared in Yun Xiangxian's room. Chen Wanrong had not left yet. Seeing Lu Chen's puppet, Chen Wanrong immediately said, "Greetings, Your Majesty." Lu Chen smiled faintly, "Senior sister, why be so polite in front of our master?" Hearing the puppet Lu Chen call Chen Wanrong senior sister, Yun Xianxian snorted lightly. This old slick, who might be older than her, had the nerve to call Chen Wanrong senior sister, and pretended to be someone from a lower world to worship her as a master. How shameless! Yun Xianxian immediately said, "You should have known that woman was coming. Why didn't you let your people take action?" Yun Xianxian knew very well that when Lu Chen's original body left Tianchen world, he left a person with the strength of the God transformation realm in Tianchen world. If Lu Chen didn't want Yun Qingshu to enter the Tianchen world, the cultivator would definitely take action, but he didn't, which means that Yun Qingshu's entry into the Tianchen world was completely Lu Chen's tacit consent. Lu Chen smiled and said, "I just want to see if she will keep her word." Yun Xianxian continued to ask coldly, "She just ran to see your other wives and concubines. Aren't you afraid that she will take action against your woman?" Lu Chen said, "If she takes action, someone will naturally mobilize the formation. But then again, I'm a little curious, what did she say to you when she came to you?" Yun Xianxian said expressionlessly, "Nothing." Lu Chen looked at Yun Xianxian with suspicion, then controlled the puppet body to come in front of Yun Xianxian, and directly hugged Yun Xiangxian's body, staring at her face with his eyes. "Really didn't say anything? She came to see you on purpose, how could she not tell you anything?" Seeing Lu Chen's questioning, Yun Xianxian was too lazy to continue hiding it. She said directly, "She passed on the memory of the great calamity in the ancient era to me, and asked me to persuade you to focus more on cultivation, lest you die before the great calamity comes." Great calamity? Lu Chen instantly became interested. He was very curious about the great calamity in the ancient era, so he asked, "Since you have the memory of the great calamity in the ancient era, then tell me, what is the so-called great calamity?" At this time, Chen Wanrong on the side realized that Yun Xianxian might say something important next, so she immediately said, "Your Majesty, Master, I will go out first." Speaking of this, Chen Wanrong turned around and prepared to leave, but as soon as she turned around, a force pulled her body back, and the next moment, her body flew into Lu Chen's arms. The puppet Lu Chen hugged Chen Wanrong with one hand and Yun Xianxian with the other. Yun Xianxian looked at Lu Chen blankly. This guy was just a puppet who couldn't do anything. Why was he holding so tightly? Lu Chen continued, Wrong, stay and listen together." Feeling the claws on her waist, Chen Wanrong could only say softly, and didn't say anything more. Yun Xianxian then said, "The so-called catastrophe is divided into two stages. In the first stage, countless powerful demons suddenly appeared in the ancient era. These demons feed on cultivators and devour the cultivators of the ancient era unscrupulously. Even the emperor is not the opponent of those demons." Hearing this, Lu Chen fell into deep thought. Countless powerful demons suddenly appeared? It seems that these demons should come from other universes. Perhaps there is a channel between this universe and other universes. When the channel is opened, those demons will run over. Thinking of this, Lu Chen asked, "What about the second stage?" Yun Xianxian replied, "The second stage." Speaking of this, Yun Xianxian hesitated, her face turned a little pale. She was affected by Yun Qingshu's memory, and everything Yun Qingshu saw in the past seemed to be seen by her. Seeing Yun Xiangxian's expression change so much, Lu Chen couldn't help but think, is the second stage of the catastrophe more terrifying than the first stage? Is there anything more terrifying than the devil eating a buffet? After Yun Xianxian recovered, she spoke again. The second stage of the catastrophe is that countless blood threads suddenly appeared in this universe. These blood threads will absorb all the creatures they come into contact with, and also absorb people's souls. Even if you escape the first stage of the devil, most people can't escape the second stage of the blood threads. These blood threads appear anywhere in the universe. No matter where people hide, they will be discovered by these blood threads. The entire universe will become desolate in a very short time, almost without vitality. Speaking of this, Yun Xiangxian's pupils shrank slightly, looking extremely terrified. Lu Chen thought, what on earth are those blood threads? How can they kill all the creatures in the universe? They can appear anywhere in the universe. Could it be that the origin of the universe is cleaning up the creatures inside? Lu Chen suddenly thought of a possibility, so he asked, Master, in addition to attacking the creatures of this universe, will those blood threads also attack the demons? Yun Xianxian replied, yes, the demons of the ancient era were also destroyed at that time. Lu Chen laughed in his heart. Why did he feel that he already knew the reason for the formation of the catastrophe? This universe is like a human body. The large-scale invasion of the universe by the demons caused the universe to have an immune response. In order to eliminate those demons, the universe began to attack indiscriminately, so there was a second stage. Those blood threads are likely to be the means of the universe to resist foreign invaders, but those blood threads not only killed the demons, but also eliminated all the creatures native to the universe. Of course, all this is just a guess by Lu Chen under the thinking of Earthlings, and it is hard to say whether it is true or not. Only when the catastrophe comes, he may be able to figure out what the catastrophe is. If his guess is correct, then in order to survive the second stage of the catastrophe, it is necessary to resist the invasion of the demons in the first stage and keep all the demons out of this universe, otherwise this universe is likely to produce that kind of weird blood thread again to kill all creatures. Lu Chen raised his hand, patted Yun Xiangxian's back slowly, and said with a smile, it's okay, it's okay. If there is another catastrophe in this era, I will definitely find a way to take you through it together. After listening to Lu Chen's comfort, Yun Xianxian felt a little better. After she came to her senses, she said expressionlessly, if you lie on women every day like this and don't focus on cultivation, it's hard to say whether you can become an emperor. You still want to lead us through the catastrophe? Lu Chen said, Master, don't worry, it's only a matter of time for me to become an emperor. I haven't let you get pregnant with my child yet. I want to become an emperor more than you do. Hearing this, Yun Xiangxian's cold cheeks flushed. This traitor is still thinking about getting her pregnant. End of this chapter. Chapter 802 Your Majesty, I am talking about the best spiritual stone. From Lu Chen's point of view, the catastrophe was still far away from him. He had better get his wives and concubines pregnant with the subworld as soon as possible, and then increase his power through the subworld. After talking about the great calamity, Lu Chen thought of something else, so he asked, Master, apart from the great calamity, what else did Master say to you? She ran to look at each of my wives and concubines before, and then left in a hurry. She must have discovered something, right? Yun Xianxian thought for a moment and replied, after she saw Rong Rong, she checked Rong Rong's body and said that Rong Rong's physique ranked first in the ancient era, and it was only a matter of time before she became emperor. She suddenly thought of something later, and then went to your other women. Hearing Yun Xiangxian's answer, Lu Chen was stunned. Is it just a matter of time before he becomes emperor? Is Yun Qingshu so optimistic about Chen Wanrong? At this time, Lu Chen subconsciously turned his head to look at Chen Wanrong in his arms. When Lu Chen looked directly at her, Chen Wanrong suddenly softened and her whole body became slightly warm. After seeing a faint red cloud appear on the face of the cold beauty, Lu Chen said with a smile, I didn't expect that my Rong talent is so high. It seems that I have found a treasure. After he finished speaking, Lu Chen used the system to check Chen Wanrong's personal information again, and found that Chen Wanrong's personal information was no different from before. Lu Chen thought in his mind that it was because the system had not been updated yet. After the last system update, when he used the system to identify other people, the information about his wives and concubines changed a lot. He only found out Chu Yukin's true identity after the system was updated. Perhaps it was because the system had not been upgraded to a certain level, so he could not detect Chen Wanrong's special physique through the system. Lu Chen then asked the system in his mind, "System, when will I be able to access information related to the ancient era?" The system immediately replied, "Only when the host becomes the great emperor will he be qualified to access information related to the ancient era." After hearing the system's answer, Lu Chen thought that it was indeed because of his insufficient cultivation. It seemed that he had to speed up his time to help his wives and concubines conceive the child. Seeing that Lu Chen fell into silence, Yun Xianxian continued, "Master said that she is going back to Suanya Palace. If your memory recovers, notify her through the formation she left in the room." Lu Chen said with a smile, "Master left so soon, and I didn't even have time to honor her." Hearing Lu Chen's words, Yun Xianxian glared at Lu Chen. Filial piety? Is the filial piety he talks about serious filial piety? This rebellious disciple seemed to have bad intentions at first glance and was greedy for her master's body. At this time, Lu Chen fell into deep thought again. Before Yun Qingshu left, he ran to see each of his wives and concubines, which proved that Yun Qingshu must have discovered something in them. Yun Qingshu first discovered the special physique in Chen Wanrong, so he decided to visit his wives, which meant that Yun Qingshu believed that his wives and concubines were similar to Chen Wanrong. Is it possible that his wives and concubines all have special physiques? Or maybe her wives and concubines are related to the ancient era? After pondering for a long time, Lu Chen couldn't figure out the reason. Lu Chen sighed slightly. So soft, this probably involves the origin of the system. When he becomes emperor, he should know what all this is about. Then Lu Chen didn't think much and returned his attention to the main body of Xiang world. At this moment, the flying boat of the Zhanlong army had appeared over the capital of the Great Xia Dynasty. The army of the Great Xia Dynasty directly released the flying boat of the Zhanlong army into the capital without any resistance. The Xia Dynasty itself has been divided, and the national preceptor of the Xia Dynasty is a demon envoy, which means that the royal family and the demon cultivator must be related. The major forces in the Great Xia Dynasty were afraid of being related to the royal family, so they all chose to join Daxia. Wherever the Zhanlong army's flying boat went, the people came out of the city to welcome them. Most of the troops of the Xia Dynasty also chose to surrender directly. Now it depends on the choice of the Emperor of Xia. Lu Chen did not enter the palace immediately. On the ferry boat, he saw some ministers waiting at the gate of the capital. Lu Chen did not hesitate at all and got off the ferry boat directly. The moment Lu Chen appeared in the sky, all the officials in Chu knelt down one after another. "Greetings to your majesty." Lu Chen said calmly, "Get up." The next moment, a little boy came to Lu Chen holding a wooden plate. Inside the wooden plate were the letters of surrender and the jade seal. Lu Chen glanced at the trembling little boy in front of him and asked curiously, "Where is Emperor Chu?" An official immediately replied, "Your Majesty, the Emperor of Chu colluded with the demon cultivator, and his crime is unforgivable. He knew you were coming, so he committed suicide in advance." "This is the youngest child of Emperor Chu," Lu Chen said, "so that's it." Then Lu Chen waved his hand, and a general next to him immediately took the wooden plate from the little boy's hand. The surrender ceremony was over, which meant that from now on, there would be no more Chu dynasty in the Xiang world. After bringing the De Chu dynasty under its rule, Lu Chen entered the treasure house of the De Chu royal family and checked some precious historical materials left by the De Chu royal family. The De Chu dynasty was an ordinary dynasty. Lu Chen searched for it but could not find the treasures or historical materials he was interested in. However, the Chu dynasty did have tens of millions of low-grade spiritual stones. Although the Great Xia Dynasty relied on the sects in the Mist World and obtained a lot of spiritual stones, the sects in the Mist World were poorer than each other at that time, and the Tianchen world was originally a world with a shortage of spiritual stones. There was no spiritual stone in the treasury of the Great Xia Dynasty until now. Seeing the mountains of spiritual stones in front of him, Lu Chen suddenly realized that when the Tianji Pavilion came to submit his work, it should also bring the spiritual stones accumulated by the Tianji Pavilion over the years, right? At that time, all his attention was on the historical materials of the Tianji Pavilion, and he completely forgot about this matter. Lu Chen then controlled the puppet he left in Black Moon City and asked the puppet to summon Xiao Yuanjia. Upon hearing that Lu Chen summoned him, Xiao Yuanjia quickly came to the yard where the puppet Lu Chen was. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Lu Chen said directly, "Your Tianji Pavilion has so many flying boats. In addition to historical materials and skills, there should be other things on the flying boats, right?" Hearing Lu Chen's question, Xiao Yuanjia seemed to understand something and quickly replied, Yes, we have brought all the treasures and spirit stones collected since the establishment of Tianji Pavilion. We present these things to Your Majesty." Lu Chen was not very interested in treasures. The treasures of the low-level cultivation world could not be as high as the treasures rewarded by his system. "How many spirit stones are there?" Xiao Yuanjia replied, "Your Majesty, there are a total of 60 million spirit stones." Lu Chen frowned, "Why only 60 million? Tianji Pavilion is at least the largest force in the Xiang world. Even the Great Chu Dynasty has 10 million spirit stones. How can the spirit stones collected by Tianji Pavilion since its establishment be hundreds of millions?" Xiao Yuanjia quickly said, "Your Majesty, I am talking about the best spirit stones." This. End of this chapter. Take a day off. I am not feeling well, so I need to take a day off. End of this chapter. Chapter 803 The Thunderbolt actually dissipated. Hearing Xiao Yuanjia's answer, Lu Chen was slightly stunned and felt a little dazed. 10 low-grade spiritual stones can be exchanged for 1 medium-grade spiritual stone, 10 medium-grade spiritual stones can be exchanged for 1 high-grade spiritual stone, and 10 high-grade spiritual stones can be exchanged for 1 top-grade spiritual stone. If all the top-grade spiritual stones are converted into low-grade spiritual stones, then 3 zeros will be added to the end, 60 billion? Lu Chen is the emperor of the lower world. 10 million low-grade spiritual stones is already a lot for him. He did not expect that the wealth of Tianji Pavilion actually has 60 billion low-grade spiritual stones. This world war directly helped the Xia Dynasty get rid of poverty. Since Tianji Pavilion has so many spiritual stones, there will naturally be no shortage of spiritual stones from other forces. Lu Chen feels that when everything stabilizes, the Great Xia Dynasty will at least be able to obtain more than 100 billion low-grade spiritual stones. With the Spirit Stone, he can activate the weapons on the immortal boat at will in the future, and the Spirit Stone can also be used to set up magic circles. In the future, the strength of the Dragon War army will rise to another level. Seeing that Lu Chen didn't speak, Xiao Yuanjia thought that Lu Chen was too dissatisfied, so he quickly added, "Your Majesty, 60 million top-quality spiritual stones are already the entire wealth of Tianji Pavilion, but if all the treasures in Tianji Pavilion are replaced by spiritual stone, maybe." Before Xiao Yuanjia finished speaking, Lu Chen came back to his senses. He coughed and said, 60 million, just 60 million. Okay, I will first ask someone to help you put these 60 million top-quality spiritual stones into the warehouse. We will talk about other things after my true body comes back. Lu Chen couldn't wait to turn these 60 million top-quality spiritual stones into his own, and he also wanted to experience the feeling of sudden wealth. Immediately, Lu Chen arranged for someone to register the 60 million. This is just a low-level cultivation world. Although there are spaces to receive orders or storage bags, there are relatively few space-based treasures. And the space is also limited, there is no way to hold 60 million top-quality spiritual stones. Lu Chen planned to personally send these spiritual stones back to the Great Xia Dynasty after he took complete control of the Xiang world. After destroying the first force in Xiang world, the remaining things became much simpler. In less than half a month, Daxia's Dragon War army appeared in various dynasties in Xiang world. At the same time, Black Moon City. Nangang Yuehua has been waiting for Lu Chen's true body to come back. She saw that Nangang Qinja has been practicing in recent days, and her cultivation has improved very quickly, and there are faint signs of breaking through to the realm of gods, which makes her feel all of this is the result of the holy level cultivation technique. She also wants to get the holy level skills now, but Lu Chen's body has never come back. Although it has only been half a month, she feels like half a year has passed. Nangang Yuehua sat in the pavilion and took a sip of tea brewed by the maid. As the tea entered her mouth, a warm current flowed into her body instantly, making her feel very comfortable. I didn't expect this spiritual tea to be so effective. In the past half-month, Nangang Yuehua has been drinking spiritual tea every day, and she clearly feels that the restrictions on her cultivation for many years have been loosened. There are many spiritual herbs and treasures in this world that can help with cultivation, but none of them are as effective as this spiritual tea. In addition to helping people practice cultivation, this spiritual tea can also nourish the soul. After Nangang Yuehua finished sipping a cup of tea, she looked towards the courtyard where Nangang Qinja was. At this moment, a force suddenly surged out from the courtyard where Nangang Qinja was. Immediately afterwards, the sky was covered with dark clouds, and countless lightning bolts were rushing among the clouds. Seeing this scene, Nangang Yuehua was slightly stunned. Nangang Qinja is actually about to break through. As long as he survives the thunder tribulation, Nangang Qinja will be in the realm of divine transformation. If she succeeds, then she will be the first monk in the Purple Sun world to reach the realm of God transformation in 10,000 years. However, the thunder tribulation is not so easy to survive. In the past, there were no locally born monks of the God transformation realm in Xiang world. This shows that the heavenly law of Xiang world does not allow the birth of monks of the God transformation realm. If a monk's strength is too strong, it may in turn refine the heavenly law of the world in which he lives, so most worlds will limit the monk's abilities. Maybe the heavenly Dao of Xiang world will increase the number of thunder tribulations to the extreme in order to prevent people from reaching the realm of divine transformation, preventing Nangang Qinja from breaking through. At this time, Lu Chen's body was still in the Dachua palace. When he learned about the situation in Black Moon City from the puppet, Lu Chen changed his body and returned to Black Moon City without hesitation. Lu Chen's real body appeared in the yard where Nangang Yuehua was. Seeing Lu Chen suddenly appearing, Nangang Yuehua was slightly startled. This guy's real body was finally back. She has been waiting here for half a month. She can only see his puppet every day, and she doesn't know when she will be able to obtain the holy level skills. Now that his true form is back, she must seize the opportunity today and find a way to obtain the holy level skills from him. Nangang Yuehua said at this time, there has never been a God transformation realm born in Xiang world before. The heavenly way of Xiang world will not allow the God transformation realm to be born in Xiang world. It is not easy for Qinja to survive the thunder tribulation. Hearing this, Lu Chen smiled faintly, and then said, "You are sisters after all, so you don't want her to survive the thunderstorm." Nangang Yuehua picked up the teacup on the table, took a sip of tea, and then said, "I really don't want her to reach the realm of divine transformation before me." Lu Chen said, "It seems that Zhuang's determination to win is quite strong. But you don't have to worry. Since I can help your sister break through so quickly, I can naturally help you break through to the realm of God transformation quickly." Hearing Lu Chen's words, Nangang Yuehua raised her eyebrows slightly, and couldn't help thinking, is Lu Chen planning to give her the saint-level skills? Then Nangang Yuehua asked tentatively, I wonder how many days your majesty plans to stay in Black Moon City this time? Lu Chen smiled and said, it depends on how many days you, Emperor Zi, want me to stay. This. Lu Chen's words made Nangang Yuehua not know how to answer. At this moment, a bowl-sized purple thunder fell from the sky. Seeing this scene, Nangang Yuehua frowned slightly. As expected, just as she thought, the heaven of this world would not allow the birth of the God transformation realm. The first thunder contained such a terrifying destructive force. It was clear that the heaven of this world wanted Nangang Kinja to die. Although Nangang Yuehua didn't want to see Nangang Kinja break through before her, she also understood that sooner or later she would face the situation that Nangang Kinja encountered. Nangang Kinja would be targeted by the heaven, so she would also be targeted by the heaven when she broke through the God transformation realm. Seeing the terrifying thunder in the Xiang world, Lu Chen chuckled and then closed his eyes. Under Lu Chen's perception, a vague consciousness seemed to appear in his mind. Lu Chen possessed the power of the origin of the universe, and it was very easy for him to communicate with the heaven of the lower world. Lu Chen then threatened, if you dare to touch me, be careful that after I unify the Xiang world, I will suck all the luck of the entire Xiang world. As soon as these words came out, the purple thunder that had already struck from the clouds dissipated instantly. This. Nangang Yuehua was stunned on the stone bench. The thunder tribulation actually dissipated? What's going on? End of this chapter. Chapter 804, all this is just a deal. Nangang Yuehua quickly calmed down. She immediately looked at Lu Chen and found that Lu Chen had his eyes closed. Nangang Yuehua instantly guessed that the dissipation of the thunder tribulation must be related to Lu Chen. Just when Nangang Yuehua was thinking about how Lu Chen made the thunder disappear, the dark clouds in the sky dissipated instantly, and the whole world returned to a sunny and cloudless state. This. Although Nangang Yuehua guessed that this was related to Lu Chen, she still felt unbelievable in her heart. Lu Chen could actually make the thunder calamity dissipate on his own? How did he do that? Lu Chen opened his eyes at this time and looked at the small courtyard where Nangang Kinja was. At this moment, majestic red spiritual power poured out from the small courtyard where Nangang Kinja was located, and the spiritual power spread out like waves. Immediately, a coercion fell from the sky, and everyone in Black Moon City felt this powerful pressure. Nangang Kinja had just broken through to the realm of transformation, and was still unable to fully control her power. At this time, Lu Chen saw Nangang Yuehua staring straight at him, and said with a smile, it was the same when you made a breakthrough. I have reached cooperation with the heaven of this world. From now on, all my women will make breakthroughs. No need to survive the tribulation. This. Nangang Yuehua was even more shocked. Doesn't Lu Chen's words mean that he has refined the way of heaven in the Xiang world, so he can do whatever he wants the way of heaven to do? Lu Chen is already the realm lord of Xiang world? Nangang Yuehua came to her senses and said, have you refined the way of heaven in the Xiang world? Lu Chen said, no, I just had a good exchange with the heavenly Dao of Xiang world. Nangang Yuehua looked at Lu Chen with suspicion. Communicate? How did you communicate? I'm afraid Lu Chen has refined the way of heaven. But thinking about it, this is just a low-level cultivation world. It is entirely possible for a monk in the God transformation realm to refine the heavenly way of this world. This is why the heavenly way in the Xiang world encounters someone who breaks through to the God transformation realm. It will bring about the terrible calamity just now. At this moment, a voice came from behind Lu Chen, thank you, Your Majesty, for helping the new family break through to the realm of gods. When Lu Chen's body came back, Nangang Kinja sensed his aura, but she was making a breakthrough just now, so she didn't come over immediately. Lu Chen looked back at Nangang Kinja, and then said, your aura is not stable yet. You should go back and continue practicing. Next, I will help Zhuang improve his strength. Hearing this, Nangang Qinja instantly understood what Lu Chen meant. She glanced at Nangang Yuehua with a meaningful look, and then said with a smile, "Sister, congratulations, you will soon become a god." A monk. Hearing Nangang Qinja's words, Nangang Yuehua frowned slightly. She thought that Nangang Qinja was trying to break through to the spirit realm before she was, so she was showing off to herself. Before Nangang Yuehua could reply, Nangang Qinja immediately returned to her yard and continued to stabilize her aura. After Nangang Qinja left, Lu Chen said, "Purple Emperor has been coming to Black Moon City for some time, and I believe you are also ready." Hearing Lu Chen's words, Nangang Yuehua thought in her mind, if it wasn't just losing her innocence, what could she be prepared for? For monks in the 10,000 Dharma realm, losing their innocence is no different from being bitten by a mosquito. Of course, this is just Nangang Yuehua's idea. She has never experienced it, so in her opinion, as long as your cultivation reaches a certain level and your body strength changes, you will naturally feel nothing. This is why monks with higher cultivation levels are less interested in the relationship between men and women. Nangang Yuehua said at this time, "I have already said that if your majesty needs my service, you can come to me at any time." Seeing Nangang Yuehua's nonchalant look, Lu Chen smiled faintly, and then said, "Okay, since the Purple Emperor said so, I won't be pretentious." Then Lu Chen waved his hand, and the two entered the room where Nangang Yuehua lived. Seeing the scenery in the room, Nangang Yuehua took a deep breath. It was finally coming, but what should she do next? Nangang Yuehua stood beside the soft couch, not knowing what to do. Others have always served her, but this is the first time she has served others. Just like the first time Nangang Qinja, she has no idea what to do. Seeing the dignified and cold Nangang Yuehua standing beside the soft couch with an expressionless face, Lu Chen smiled faintly. These two sisters are really of good character. Then Lu Chen slowly walked to Nangang Yuehua. Seeing Lu Chen getting closer and closer, Nangang Yuehua suddenly felt that his heartbeat seemed to start to speed up, and the spiritual power in his body became restless. Nangang Yuehua quickly exercised his skills, trying to stabilize the restless spiritual power in his body. Unlike Nangang Qinja, Nangang Yuehua seems to have very strong self-control. If it were Nangang Qinja, her body would not be able to bear it just by being close to her. Nangang Yuehua was the first among Lu Chen's women who could suppress the restless spiritual power so easily after drinking Dragon Phoenix tea. After Lu Chen came to Nangang Yuehua, he stretched out his hand and directly hugged Nangang Yuehua's waist. The two bodies were close to each other. Lu Chen looked into Nangang Yuehua's eyes and said, "The Purple Emperor is worthy of being an emperor, can be so calm at such a time." Feeling Lu Chen's big hands roaming her body through her gauze, Nangang Yuehua's body's spiritual power became restless again, but she still used her skills to control it. Lu Chen did not block Nangang Yuehua's spiritual power. Lu Chen felt that it was boring to limit the spiritual power of his wives and concubines every time, which made them unable to resist him. So he decided that he would not limit their power unless he met someone who provoked him in the future. Staring at Lu Chen's deep eyes, Nangang Yuehua's heartbeat accelerated again unconsciously. This was the first time in her life that she looked at a man so closely. Nangang Yuehua said at this time, "All this is just a deal. If your majesty wants me to have feelings for your majesty, it seems a bit difficult to ask." Hearing Nangang Yuehua's response, Lu Chen's mouth corners slightly raised. "You are right, you have no feelings for me, so it is normal not to have feelings. In this case, I will treat it as a deal." Nangang Yuehua was a little confused. What does "treat it as a deal" mean? Isn't this a deal? Could it be that Lu Chen really thought that I had feelings for him at the beginning? Just when Nangang Yuehua was thinking this, her red lips were suddenly blocked, and the next moment she felt a warm spiritual power pouring into her mouth. Nangang Yuehua was a little caught off guard by Lu Chen's sudden attack, but she quickly calmed down. She found that there was no discomfort when kissing Lu Chen, and she was finally relieved. She thought she would have resistance to contact with men, but now it seems that she was worrying too much. Since there will be no resistance, there will be no problem in completing the transaction between her and Lu Chen. She will go there, and when Lu Chen finishes, she will be able to obtain the saint-level skills. This deal is very cost-effective. End of this chapter. Chapter 805, Purple Emperor is really patient. Lu Chen found that Nangang Yuehua was indeed a patient woman. After they kissed for a quarter of an hour, Nangang Yuehua still hadn't entered the state. Moreover, Nangang Yuehua had been drinking dragon and phoenix tea for the past half-month. It stands to reason that the effect of dragon and phoenix tea had already taken effect, but Nangang Yuehua was able to easily suppress the restless spiritual power in her body through exercise. If it were any other woman, let alone drinking dragon and phoenix tea, even if she had never drunk dragon and phoenix tea, after kissing him, her blood would definitely surge and she would be unable to control herself. Lu Chen was still very confident in his kissing skills. Lu Chen was a little curious in his heart, how could Nangang Yuehua be more patient than Bai Qingqing before? Bai Qingqing, a woman without emotions, could enter the state after drinking dragon and phoenix tea and kissing him for less than a quarter of an hour. Now it seems that compared with Bai Qingqing, Nangang Yuehua is more like a woman without emotions. But this is not a big deal for Lu Chen. Seeing that Nangang Yuehua was still able to calm down, Lu Chen stopped wasting time. He pushed Nangang Yuehua gently onto the couch and groped her body with his claws. Unlike Lu Chen's wives and concubines, Lu Chen's other women had a messy mind after being kissed by Lu Chen, so they had no idea what Lu Chen was doing. Nangang Yuehua was conscious, so she could clearly feel Lu Chen's claws slowly unbuttoning her belt and wandering around her body. In this case, Nangang Yuehua was still able to control herself, but her body was gradually getting hot, and Nangang Yuehua could only control her emotions at most. Seeing the dignified and noble empress under him trying to endure it, Lu Chen's desire to conquer surged again. Since Nangang Yuehua was so patient, let's just get to the point. At this moment, Nangang Yuehua felt restless all over. She used her spiritual power again to try to calm herself down. After a while, Nangang Yuehua finally suppressed her restless body, and then at this moment, Lu Chen suddenly sank down. Nangang Yuehua finally couldn't control herself and made a hum sound. Then Lu Chen directly used the method he used to deal with Yun Xianxian to deal with Nangang Yuehua. He entered a violent state right away, not caring whether Nangang Yuehua could resist it. Nangang Yuehua was at least in the Wanfa realm, and Lu Chen had been instilling King Mu Chong Sheng Gong into Nangang Yuehua, so Nangang Yuehua didn't feel any discomfort. With the use of many methods by Lu Chen, Nangang Yuehua couldn't calm her body's restlessness with her spiritual power. Nangang Yuehua originally wanted to endure it by clenching her teeth, but the guy blocked her mouth, so she could only resist it. Nangang Yuehua thought to herself at this time that it was only one day anyway, so she could just endure it. All this is just a deal, and I absolutely cannot have that kind of feeling towards this man. Nangang Yuehua is afraid of feelings in her heart. She is afraid that she will fall in love with a man. For a woman like her who holds power, falling in love with a man is equivalent to having a weakness. No matter in which era, if a woman wants to be in power, she must be more ruthless than a man. Nangang Yuehua has closed her emotions since she was a child, especially towards men. She puts all her thoughts on cultivation and power struggle. She is a person who is corrupted by power. It would be very uncomfortable for her to lose power. So when Lu Chen said that she could stay and continue to be in charge of the Xiang world, although she had some doubts about Lu Chen's purpose, she still chose to stay. Not only did she choose to stay, she even chose to take the initiative to come to Black Moon City and let Lu Chen play with her. At this moment, Nangang Yuehua felt that her consciousness was becoming more and more blurred. Nangang Yuehua was startled. No, she absolutely could not have that kind of feeling towards this man. Once she got stuck, her future life would not be under her control. She and Lu Chen are just making a deal now. After the deal is completed, if one day she wants to leave the Xiang world and Lu Chen, she can leave at any time. But if she has that kind of feeling for this man, she may fall in love with him in the future. With the love between men and women, she will never be able to control her life in the future. However, as time passed, even though Nangang Yuehua had been struggling to maintain consciousness, the spiritual power in her body was eventually drawn out by Lu Chen. As Lu Chen's spiritual power entered her body, the spiritual power of the two seemed to form a cycle. Nangang Yuehua suddenly realized that her cultivation had actually improved in this process. Nangang Yuehua instantly understood that this was not just a simple matter. Lu Chen should be operating a dual cultivation method. This dual cultivation method is not one way, but beneficial to both parties. Nangang Yuehua immediately began to operate her spiritual power, trying to divert her attention through cultivation, but every once in a while, the spiritual power in her body would burst out uncontrollably. A day passed quickly. The next morning, when a ray of sunlight shone into the house, Lu Chen was still busy. I don't know if it's because of the detoxification, but at this time, Nangang Yuehua's snow-white skin is already covered with countless beads of sweat. Nangang Yuehua looked out the window with the corner of her eyes, and saw a ray of golden light shining outside the window. Nangang Yuehua thought to herself that it was finally over. However, Nangang Yuehua soon found that Lu Chen had no intention of stopping, which made Nangang Yuehua feel incomprehensible. Practice requires gradual progress, not to mention that the dual cultivation method is only a method of auxiliary cultivation, and ordinary people cannot use this method to practice for a long time. It has been a day, even if Lu Chen is using her to practice, it is time. After an unknown amount of time, Lu Chen finally stopped. He slowly raised his chest, lowered his head and looked down at Nangang Yuehua. The hair of the noble empress under him was already disheveled, and the phoenix hairpin was tilted to one side. Although she tried very hard to restrain the restlessness of her body, her cheeks still flushed, and Nangang Yuehua's eyes with a hint of mist still had some stubbornness. Seeing that Lu Chen finally stood up, Nangang Yuehua felt relieved. She guessed that it should be over. Next, Lu Chen should give her the saint-level skills, right? Just as Nangang Yuehua was thinking this, Lu Chen raised his hand, stroked Nangang Yuehua's jade face, and said with a smile, "The Purple Emperor is really patient." After Nangang Yuehua calmed down the restless spiritual power in her body, she said, "Hey! Your Majesty can." Nangang Yuehua was interrupted by Lu Chen before she finished speaking. "It seems that I didn't let the Purple Emperor have fun." Nangang Yuehua was stunned. What does Lu Chen mean? Could it be? Before Nangang Yuehua could react, Lu Chen leaned down again. Nangang Yuehua didn't expect Lu Chen to be able to continue, and then she hurriedly used her power again, trying to control her restless spiritual power again. End of this chapter. Chapter 806. I want to hear your true voice. Nangang Yuehua thought that she could finish her training in one day at most, but she didn't expect that Lu Chen's real purpose was not to practice at all. Nangang Yuehua's hard bones stimulated Lu Chen, and made Lu Chen have a strong desire to win. He hadn't been so violent in a long time. Lu Chen used various means to deal with Nangang Yuehua at the beginning, but Nangang Yuehua had accepted them one by one. Lu Chen also understood that when he changed his means, he gave Nangang Yuehua a lot of breathing time, so she could always temporarily recover some rationality through exercise. In this case, just use one method and don't give her any chance to recover her rationality. Lu Chen thought to himself, he wanted to see how long she could maintain her rationality. Soon, Nangang Yuehua found that the spiritual power in her body was becoming more and more chaotic. She tried to divert her attention by practicing the exercises again, but soon the feeling like a wave continued to surge in her heart, and she couldn't focus on exercise at all. At this time, Nangang Yuehua realized that Lu Chen had stopped practicing. He was not practicing anymore. He was just. This guy wanted to use this method to make her surrender. Nangang Yuehua still refused to admit defeat. She absolutely could not make any sound. The two of them had now entered a state of game. Nangang Yuehua had become the empress all along because of her spirit of not admitting defeat. She did not believe that she would lose to a man and be conquered by the man in front of her. Even if Lu Chen was gifted, he could not last too long in such a violent situation. Thinking of this, Nangang Yuehua once again concentrated her mind and continued to practice. However, at this moment, she suddenly felt a huge wave connecting the sky appeared in her sea of consciousness and hit her. Seeing the huge wave getting closer and closer to her consciousness, Nangang Yuehua's fear reached its peak. No. After hearing the sound in Nangang Yuehua's throat, Lu Chen knew that he had succeeded, so he stopped blocking Nangang Yuehua's mouth. He wanted to hear what she would say now. Your Majesty, spare my life. The noble and dignified empress finally chose to admit defeat directly. Hearing this, Lu Chen smiled faintly, ignored her, and continued to work on his own affairs while the iron was hot. At this time, Nangang Yuehua knew that she was finished. As long as she started, she would be completely defeated by this guy. After being overturned by the huge wave of the sea of consciousness, Nangang Yuehua no longer held on and chose to let nature take its course. At the same time, roof. A red blood mist appeared on the roof, and soon the blood mist condensed into the shape of a person. Hearing Nangang Yuehua's voice, the expressionless Nangang Kinja chuckled. It seemed that her sister finally lost to Lu Chen. I really don't know what evil skills Lu Chen practiced to have such a strong hard power. Although Nangang Yuehua's consciousness was blurred, she also sensed Nangang Kinja on the roof. When she thought that her ugly appearance was discovered by Nangang Kinja, Nangang Yuehua felt extremely humiliated. Although she had surrendered to Lu Chen, she was still an empress after all. As an empress, she would show such an ugly appearance because of such a thing. Damn it! This man did it on purpose. He just wanted to humiliate her in this way. It was as if he was saying to her, "Didn't you say that all this was just a deal, then why did you get emotional? Forget it." Nangang Yuehua closed her eyes. Half a month passed in a flash. In the room, Lu Chen pressed Nangang Yuehua's body, admiring her beautiful face, and then leaned over and whispered in Nangang Yuehua's ear, "It's so beautiful." After hearing Lu Chen's words, Nangang Yuehua, who was already fuzzy, suddenly woke up. She was indeed better than Lu Chen's other women, and she recovered quickly. However, after regaining consciousness, Nangang Yuehua did not respond to Lu Chen's words. Obviously, Lu Chen was humiliating her, and there was nothing to respond to. Seeing that Nangang Yuehua didn't speak, Lu Chen twisted his body slightly. Nangang Yuehua said lightly, thinking that this guy was going to start again, and then hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, if you want to listen, why not just give an order directly? Why do this?" Nangang Yuehua also saw through Lu Chen's thoughts. Lu Chen just wanted to hear her voice and then enjoy the joy of conquest. Lu Chen smiled and said, "If it is an order, it would be boring. I want to hear your most real voice. Who can't howl, but the fake sound obviously doesn't have that taste." Hearing Lu Chen's answer, Nangang Yuehua snorted in her heart. To put it bluntly, this guy just wants to humiliate her. In this case, there is nothing to say. Although she was confused for the past 10 days, she can still judge that it has been about 10 days now. This guy is simply playing with her like a slave girl. When she thought that her ugly howling had been known to the people of the city lord's mansion of the entire Black Moon City, Nangang Yuehua felt particularly humiliated. Although she is Lu Chen's woman, she still has to live in Xiang world in the future, and she has to help Lu Chen manage half of Xiang world. If others knew that she, a female emperor, was so dissolute in front of Lu Chen, where would her dignity as a female emperor be? Forget it, let them know, anyway, things have already happened. At this time, a golden sphere flew out of Lu Chen's forehead, and the sphere quickly entered Nangang Yuehua's forehead. The next moment, the content of King Mu Chong Sheng Gong appeared in Nangang Yuehua's mind. After feeling the effect of King Mu Chong Sheng Gong, Nangang Yuehua was stunned. This is the holy level technique? It can actually bring people back to life? It's not too much to classify such a technique as a god-level technique, right? In fact, resurrection is very common in the high-level cultivation world, especially for those strong people who can leave their souls. For most cultivators, as long as the soul is not extinguished, it is not considered death. So King Mu Chong Sheng Gong has not reached the level of a god-level technique. Of course, this is mainly because Nangang Yuehua herself is in the low-level cultivation world, so she is so shocked by the effect of King Mu Chong Sheng Gong. Nangang Yuehua thought to herself, no wonder this guy is so fierce, and she doesn't feel any pain even though he abuses her like this. It turns out that he has been using the life force of King Mu Chong Sheng Gong to heal her, so no matter what he does, even if his body turns into a residual image when he attacks, she will not be hurt. It's a pity that this holy level technique is not used to improve strength. But it doesn't matter, since Lu Chen can teach the holy level technique to others so easily, it means that he may have more holy level techniques. As long as she continues to stay by Lu Chen's side, sooner or later she will get the holy level technique to improve her strength. But end of this chapter. Request leave. I have gastroenteritis and feel unwell. I will take another day off and resume updating tomorrow. End of this chapter. Chapter 807, The First Cultivator Conference in Xiang World. When Nangang Yuehua thought of what Lu Chen had done to her in the past 10 days, her body couldn't help but tremble slightly. I don't know what kind of elixir this guy took to have such a powerful strength. If I continue to stay by Lu Chen's side, won't I really become his plaything in the future? Just when Nangang Yuehua was distracted, Lu Chen slowly pulled himself away. As Lu Chen stood up, Nangang Yuehua suddenly felt a sense of emptiness. At this time, Lu Chen walked towards the side room of the bedroom, saying as he walked, "You should stabilize your cultivation first. More than 10 days is enough for the Zhanlong army to take down most of the forces in the Xiang world, and it's time to end the war." Seeing Lu Chen's leaving back, Nangang Yuehua's inner emotions were extremely complicated. Although she had gotten what she wanted, she also understood that she might never be able to escape from Lu Chen's palm in the future. She was vaguely fascinated by that feeling in her heart, and she found that her cultivation was also rapidly improved in that process. In the past, she always thought that dual cultivation was just an auxiliary cultivation, so it was the same for practitioners whether they had a Taoist partner or not. Moreover, the dual cultivation techniques in this world were indeed not very good, but dual cultivation with Lu Chen had such a good effect. After Lu Chen walked out of her sight, Nangang Yuehua sensed her own cultivation. Finding that her cultivation was about to break through the God transformation realm, Nangang Yuehua understood why Nangang Kinja could become a cultivator in the God transformation realm so quickly. She thought that Nangang Kinja could break through the God transformation realm so quickly because of the saint-level techniques in Lu Chen's hands. Now it seems that the reason why Nangang Kinja could break through so quickly was because of dual cultivation with Lu Chen. Thinking of this, Nangang Yuehua lowered her head slightly and glanced at her snow-white body. Lu Chen was a huge opportunity for her. Although she might be played by Lu Chen, as long as she seized the opportunity, she would probably reach a higher level in the future. Nangang Yuehua didn't think about it anymore. She crossed her legs and began to practice. After Lu Chen took a shower, he returned to the front line and continued to lead the Zhanlong army to integrate the forces of Xiang world. It took less than a month for all the forces in Xiang world to surrender. Lu Chen immediately summoned all the leaders of the major forces in Xiang world to the capital of Great Xia Dynasty and convened the first meeting of cultivators in Xiang world. In the council hall of Great Xia Dynasty, the leaders of the major forces did not dare to breathe. At this time, Lu Chen, wearing a black and gold dragon robe, was sitting on the phoenix chair where Nangang Yuehua usually sat, while Nangang Yuehua and Nangang Qinja sat on both sides of him. Lu Chen glanced at the people in the hall at this time, and then said, "I think everyone already knows why I summoned you. I plan to establish the Immortal Alliance and divide Xiang world into two. Half of the land will be allocated to the Immortal Alliance, and the other half of the land will be allocated to the Great Xia Dynasty." Hearing this, people instantly understood Lu Chen's intention. Emperor Xia wanted to divide and rule, so that the two major forces would continue to be hostile, and then he could easily control the entire Xiang world. However, even though they knew Lu Chen's purpose, the people present did not dare to say anything against it. Now the entire Xiang world has fallen into the hands of Emperor Xia, and Emperor Xia can do whatever he wants. The Great Xia Dynasty can no longer be considered a secular dynasty. If it were a secular dynasty, the emperor himself would be bound by his hands if he did not have military power. But Emperor Xia is different. Emperor Xia himself has a strong strength, and it is an absolute strength that is overwhelming. If he wants to implement any policy, it is just a matter of a word, and no one dares to sing against him. After Lu Chen finished speaking, he glanced at the people present, and then continued, "Do you have any opinions?" After Lu Chen finished speaking, everyone in the hall immediately said, "We will obey the decree of His Majesty." People thought to themselves that now the entire Xiang world is in the hands of Emperor Xia, they dare to have any opinions, and those who have opinions are probably blown into pieces by the rune weapons of the Great Xia Dynasty. Seeing that no one in the hall stood up to say anything, Lu Chen continued, "Since everyone has no objection, then this matter is settled. From today on, Nangang Qinja is the leader of the Immortal Alliance." After Lu Chen finished speaking, everyone's eyes fell on Nangang Qinja, but people did not feel strange at all. It has long been rumored that Lu Chen is going to marry Nangang Yuehua and Nangang Qinja. Emperor Xia probably did this to consolidate his rule. If the two of them marry Emperor Xia, they will be a family with Emperor Xia in the future. Even if there will be some competition between the two of them, they will still be on Emperor Xia's side. Lu Chen continued, "In addition, I believe everyone has heard that I plan to marry Nangang Yuehua and Nangang Qinja, and the wedding will be held in 10 days. As soon as Lu Chen finished speaking, the voices of the crowd in the hall rang out again, "We congratulate Your Majesty." Lu Chen continued calmly, "In the future, the Xiang world will hold a cultivator conference every 10 years. The venues will be the capital of the Great Xia Dynasty and Black Moon City. One conference will be held in each of these two places." Seeing that Lu Chen divided the cultivator conference into two locations, people once again understood Lu Chen's intention. Black Moon City is located in the newly established Immortal Alliance, which is Nangang Qinja's territory. The cultivator conference was divided into two locations to avoid the influence of the Great Xia Dynasty and the Immortal Alliance. After all, cultivators are the existence that dominates this world. Lu Chen then mentioned several new rules of the Xiang world. This first conference of cultivators was mainly to set rules for the various forces in the Xiang world. The leaders of the various forces present did not have any chance to speak actively, and at most they just agreed. After the new rules were finished, Lu Chen glanced at the people present again, and then asked, "If you have any questions, you can raise them now." After Lu Chen finished speaking, no one at the scene took the initiative to stand up. After an unknown period of time, the leader of a top force stood up with trepidation. Seeing someone stand up, Lu Chen asked, "I wonder if Sect Master Qin has any questions." The man hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, now that the Tianchen world and the Xiang world are connected, I wonder if the cultivators of the Xiang world can enter the Tianchen world. As soon as this was said, everyone in the hall looked at Lu Chen in unison. They also wanted to know whether Lu Chen would allow them to enter the Tianchen world. In their opinion, the Tianchen world could give birth to such a powerful existence as Lu Chen, which proved that the Tianchen world must not be an ordinary world. Moreover, now that the Xiang world has been controlled by Emperor Xia is likely to transfer the resources of the Xiang world to the Tianchen world, and the Tianchen world will become more prosperous in the future. Lu Chen was silent for a moment. He actually thought about this issue some time ago. End of this chapter. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Chapter 808 Your Majesty, it is late at night. Although the spiritual energy of Tianchen world has recovered, compared to Xiang world, the spiritual energy is still very thin. The overall strength of the monks in Xiang world is stronger than that in Tianchen world. If monks from the Xiang world were allowed to enter the Tianchen world, it would likely cause some trouble. But having said that, if the monks from the Xiang world can enter the Tianchen world and communicate with the monks in the Tianchen world, and their secrets and techniques can enter the Tianchen world, this can help the monks in the Tianchen world improve their strength. There are advantages and disadvantages to this. Lu Chen thought for a moment and then said, after 2 years, I will hold a conference of cultivators from both worlds in Tianchen world. After the conference of cultivators from both worlds, I will gradually relax restrictions and allow monks from both worlds to enter any one of them. World. Hearing Lu Chen's words, the monks present became excited. They thought that Emperor Xia came from the Tianchen world, and that the Tianchen world must be better than the Xiang world. If they could enter the Tianchen world to practice, their strength would definitely be improved than in the Tianchen world. Xiang world is fast. At this time, Lu Chen glanced at everyone present again, and then continued to ask, I wonder if you have anything else to do? If not, today's meeting will end here. The leaders of the major forces present looked at each other again. In the end, no one stood up. They came today to listen to Lu Chen's rules. They did not dare to say too much. Seeing that no one was talking anymore, Lu Chen then said, since you have nothing else to do, let's break up the meeting. As soon as the words fell, Lu Chen's figure disappeared on the spot. After seeing Lu Chen leave, everyone in the hall breathed a sigh of relief. What they were most afraid of when they came to attend the cultivators' conference this time was that Emperor Xia would randomly find a few people to scare others. Fortunately, Emperor Xia only established the rules and did nothing else. His life was saved. The next step was the division of power. The split of the Xiang world into two means that there will be two major forces in the Xiang world in the future. Emperor Xia really did it because he liked them to fight each other. Therefore, these forces must choose a force. If they become the wall-riding faction, they will definitely die miserably. Even if Emperor Xia will not take action against them, the two major forces will not let the wall-riding faction go. They must choose a force to protect them. Then the hall became extremely lively, and leaders of all forces began to form cliques. Some chose to join the Great Xia Dynasty, and some chose to join the Immortal Alliance. In this way, the prototypes of the two major forces in Xiang world appeared. 10 days later. The imperial palace of the Great Xia Dynasty. Red lanterns and red decorations are hung everywhere in the palace, which looks extremely festive. Today is the day when Lu Chen marries Nangang Yuehua and Nangang Qinjia. The leaders of all the major forces in Xiang world came and gave Lu Chen many precious gifts. After the wedding banquet, Lu Chen came to Nangang Yuehua's bedroom. At this time, Nangang Yuehua was wearing a dark red robe and sitting quietly on the soft couch. She was not wearing a hijab and had been eaten up by Lu Chen long ago. The small etiquette of wearing a hijab was dispensable to her. After Lu Chen entered the room, he saw the dignified and noble Nangang Yuehua sitting on the soft couch with an indifferent expression, and asked with a smile, "What? Are you unhappy? Don't you want to marry me?" Nangang Yuehua said calmly, "Your Majesty is very powerful. There is no woman in the world who doesn't want to marry your Majesty." Lu Chen approached to the bedside, then stretched out his hand, lifted Nangang Yuehua's chin, and stared at her beautiful face. "That's what I say, but why do I feel that you seem to be unwilling to marry me?" Nangang Yuehua said, "Your Majesty, this deal is a good deal for me, and I am not unwilling." Although she was addicted to Lu Chen's violence last time in Black Moon City, it has been so long and she has recovered again, and now she has no interest in men. After hearing Nangang Yuehua's words, Lu Chen said nothing and just stared at her cut eyes. Being looked at so directly by Lu Chen, Nangang Yuehua's heart began to beat faster, and the things Lu Chen did to her in Black Moon City came to mind. After an unknown amount of time, Nangang Yuehua took the initiative to speak, "Your Majesty, it's late at night." Although Nangang Yuehua has no interest in men and women now, she is married to Lu Chen after all, and she still knows what responsibilities she should perform as Lu Chen's woman. After hearing Nangang Yuehua's words, Lu Chen smiled and said, "Are you so anxious, madam?" There was no reaction on Nangang Yuehua's face, but at this moment Lu Chen suddenly pushed her down on the soft couch, and then put a paw on her belt. Nangang Yuehua sighed slightly in her heart, thinking that she hoped that Lu Chen would return to Tianchen world after this time. Lu Chen should have a lot of women in Tianchen world. After Lu Chen returned, she would not have to sleep with him. Just when Nangang Yuehua was thinking this, there was a tearing sound in his ears. Nangang Yuehua was a little speechless. Lu Chen was also a strong man after all, but he was so impatient. At this moment, Nangang Yuehua suddenly felt that her red lips were blocked by Lu Chen, and then, a strange feeling slowly emerged. Nangang Yuehua quickly used her luck to resist this feeling like she did in Black Moon City last time. Lu Chen changed his tactics this time. Last time in Black Moon City, he felt that sealing off the spiritual power of his wives and concubines would make it impossible for them to practice and see their true reactions, so it was meaningless to do so. But now his concept has changed. If the spiritual power in her body is not sealed, a woman with strong endurance like Nangang Yuehua can practice and resist for a long time. Using the power to resist the restlessness of the body is not entirely a real reaction. So he decided to directly seal off the spiritual power in Nangang Yuehua's body this time. Just when Nangang Yuehua was practicing and resisting, she suddenly found that she could not sense the spiritual power. She seemed to have become an ordinary person. Nangang Yuehua was stunned in an instant. After just a moment of trance, Nangang Yuehua was occupied by the bone-eroding feeling. Nangang Yuehua instantly understood what was going on. It was obvious that Lu Chen had sealed her spiritual power in some way. Nangang Yuehua was now completely suppressed. She had no way to control the restlessness in her body through exercise, nor could she grit her teeth. She could only raise her jade hands and hug Lu Chen's neck tightly. An hour passed in the blink of an eye. The next room. A woman in a crimson robe was also sitting on the bed. Nangang Kinja had already sensed that Lu Chen had gone to the next room. She was a little curious why there was no sound coming from him now. Nangang Kinja slowly got up and walked to the window, looking at the full moon in the sky and feeling the cool water blowing on her face. She thought to herself, Lu Chen has been in the next room for so long, and he still hasn't entered the state? She could actually release her spiritual power to sense the situation next door, but she didn't plan to do so. Once she released her spiritual power to sense the situation next door, she would be discovered by Lu Chen, which would indirectly disturb Lu Chen. She didn't want to disturb Lu Chen's interest. End of this chapter. Chapter 809. This bastard is not thinking. Nangang Kinja stood in front of the window and blew the wind for a while, but still didn't hear any sound coming from the next door, but if she listened quietly, she could still hear the crunching sound. Nangang Kinja instantly understood what was going on. Nangang Kinja chuckled lightly, "You can bear it." Obviously, the two people had already started, but Nangang Yuehua was holding on. Nangang Kinja thought of a problem at this time. She and Nangang Yuehua married Lu Chen at the same time. It stands to reason that she and Nangang Yuehua would serve Lu Chen tonight. But with Lu Chen's strength, let alone tonight, even tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, or even this month, it might not be her turn. Thinking of this, Nangang Kinja felt a little disappointed in her heart. She was completely opposite to Nangang Yuehua. Nangang Yuehua was not very interested in men, but she was full of interest in Lu Chen and wished that Lu Chen would attack her. The evil cultivator herself is depraved. After being tortured by Lu Chen in Black Moon City last time, she fell in love with the feeling of being with Lu Chen. She also knew in her heart that Lu Chen was very powerful. Once she and Lu Chen did that kind of thing again, it was very likely that she would have the same dissipation situation as last time. But even though she knew it would feel like that, she still looked forward to being tortured by Lu Chen. Unfortunately, the first place Lu Chen went to today was Nangang Yuehua's room. I'm afraid it will be at least a month or two before Lu Chen practices dual cultivation with her again. Just when Nangang Kinja was distracted by her thoughts, a voice suddenly came from next door. Lu Chen looked down at Nangang Yuehua, whose face was flushed, and the corners of his mouth slightly raised, revealing a playful smile. At this moment, Nangang Yuehua, who had been holding on for 2 hours, suddenly opened his mouth. "Ah! Your Majesty, spare your life." Nangang Yuehua finally chose to give up. With the spiritual power in his body blocked, he had no way to divert his attention or stabilize his restless heart. She also figured it out at this time. She had already lost last time, and her cultivation was not banned by Lu Chen last time. Even if her cultivation was not banned, she was no match for Lu Chen. Now that her cultivation is banned, how could she be Lu Chen's opponent? After the first sound, Nangang Yuehua no longer suppressed himself. Nangang Kinja stood at the window and heard Nangang Yuehua's continuous begging for mercy. She sneered, "I thought you could hold on forever, but you can't bear it anymore so soon." Although Nangang Kinja said so, she also knew in her heart how terrible Lu Chen's torture was, and being able to persist until now was considered very beneficial. If it were her, I'm afraid she wouldn't be able to hold it for a quarter of an hour, let alone an hour. But she is different from Nangang Yuehua. Nangang Yuehua usually looks dignified, noble, and aloof, but now she is treated like a plaything by others. And she herself is an evil cultivator, and she should be addicted to men and women. Thinking of Nangang Yuehua, the Empress, being treated like that by Lu Chen, Nangang Kinja seemed to feel a strange joy in her heart. Just when Nangang Kinja was thinking this, suddenly, the originally blurry voice suddenly became clear. The voice from next door rang directly in her bedroom. Nangang Kinja was slightly startled and quickly turned around, only to find Lu Chen and Nangang Yuehua on their wedding bed. This. Nangang Yuehua also noticed that she was taken to Nangang Kinja's room by Lu Chen, and Nangang Kinja was staring directly at the side. She looked a little panicked and said, "Your Majesty, don't." Lu Chen didn't give Nangang Yuehua a chance to say more. At this time, Nangang Kinja was standing by the window, looking at Lu Chen and Nangang Yuehua with a speechless expression. At this time, Nangang Kinja could clearly see how Lu Chen fought against Nangang Yuehua. Seeing that she could not escape, Nangang Yuehua finally closed her eyes and allowed the sound to come out of her throat. After an unknown amount of time, Nangang Kinja turned around and said sarcastically, "Sister, I never thought that you, a majestic empress, would look like this in front of His Majesty." After hearing Nangang Kinja's voice, although Nangang Yuehua felt a little humiliated, there was nothing he could do. Lu Chen, this bastard, is really hateful. He was doing well next door, but why did he suddenly bring her to this room again? It was clear that he wanted to make her look embarrassed. This was not the demeanor of a strong man at all. After a while, Lu Chen took a deep breath and said to Nangang Kinja at the window without looking back, "Come here." The corners of Nangang Kinja's mouth raised slightly, revealing a charming smile. "Yes, Your Majesty." After hearing Lu Chen's words, Nangang Yuehua was startled. Could this bastard be thinking? This is not okay. She wasn't mentally prepared yet. Then even though she was unwilling in her heart, she couldn't stop him. Without the power, she couldn't push Lu Chen away. In the end, Nangang Yuehua had no choice but to accept her fate. She had long expected this day to come, so she accepted it very quickly. At the same time, in a certain courtyard of the palace, Ji Kaihuya was sitting cross-legged in a pavilion meditating. At this time, she opened her eyes, and there seemed to be a trace of resentment in her eyes. Ji Kaihuya felt very unhappy when she thought about what happened during the day. Originally, Lu Chen made her a noble concubine, but she was very happy in her heart. She thought that she was very important in Lu Chen's heart, so Lu Chen made her a noble concubine. As a result, not long after that, Lu Chen actually made Nangang Yuehua and Nangang Kinja his concubines. All of a sudden, Lu Chen, the emperor, had 3 concubines around him. After thinking for a while, Ji Kaihuya sighed, "Forget it, anyway, she has become this bastard's woman, and she can't leave him anymore." Moreover, the emperor has many women, and with Lu Chen's strength, there are even more women, so it's normal to have 1 or 2 more concubines. Besides, Lu Chen made them concubines, most likely for political considerations, not necessarily for any deep feelings for them. Lu Chen still loves her more, so there is no need for her to care too much about this matter. Thinking of this, Ji Kaihuya felt much better, and then she closed her eyes again and continued to practice. She planned to improve her strength as soon as possible, and then follow Lu Chen back to the Tianchen world. Only when she is stronger can she have a place in Lu Chen's harem. At this time, Nangang Yuehua and Nangang Kinja had already changed shifts. Unlike Nangang Yuehua, Nangang Kinja had no restraint at all, and she was even more vulgar. "Good brother! I want to die." "Ah! Master! You are so fierce!" Nangang Yuehua frowned and looked at Nangang Kinja. Although she also howled just now, she did not howl like Nangang Kinja. Nangang Yuehua snorted coldly, and then said, "You are really shameless." Nangang Kinja came to the side to mock her before, and now she finally found an opportunity. She would not miss this opportunity to humiliate Nangang Kinja. However, as soon as Nangang Yuehua finished speaking, she was pulled over by Lu Chen, and then her red lips were blocked. Chapter 810, The Master Wants to Practice, You Go Find Someone Else First. Lu Chen did not plan to stay in the Xiang world for too long. Now that the 2 worlds have merged, he planned to absorb part of the luck from the Xiang world and then help one of his wives and concubines give birth to a child. After entangled with Nangang sisters for half a month, Nangang Yuehua finally broke through to the realm of transformation into gods. Feeling Nangang Yuehua's spiritual power gushing out, Lu Chen immediately stopped punishing her and pulled away. Looking at Nangang Yuehua's charming appearance, Lu Chen said with a smile, "You have just made a breakthrough, so you should stabilize your cultivation." Hearing this, Nangang Yuehua felt extremely surprised in her heart. She did feel that she had made a breakthrough, and she made it in that state. But after she broke through the realm, she didn't encounter a natural disaster? Nangang Yuehua glanced at the man next to her. Could it be him? Nangang Yuehua guessed that this was what Lu Chen had done. The last time Nangang Kinja broke through in Black Moon City, Lei Ji also disappeared inexplicably. The 2 of them have one thing in common, that is, they are both Lu Chen's women. Most likely, Lu Chen did something to help them avoid the thunderstorm. Who is this guy, and how can he have such a method to avoid thunder tribulation? Nangang Yuehua became more and more curious about Lu Chen's true identity, but she didn't think much about it. The first priority was to stabilize her own realm. Immediately, Nangang Yuehua sat cross-legged, circulated the spiritual power in his body, and began to stabilize his realm. After Lu Chen pulled away, he was not idle. He immediately pulled Nangang Kinja over and pressed him down. When Nangang Yuehua was cultivating to stabilize her state, Nangang Kinja's ghostly crying and howling sounds kept echoing in Nangang Yuehua's ears, which made Nangang Yuehua extremely irritable. However, Nangang Yuehua couldn't say much now. After all, she was no different from Nangang Kinja before. After calming down the restless spiritual power in his body, Nangang Yuehua opened his eyes and stared at the ups and downs of the figure. A complex emotion flashed through her eyes. Although all this was voluntary and was just a transaction for her, she also found that she had been enslaved by this guy. She had completely become this guy's plaything. Thinking of this, Nangang Yuehua sighed slightly in her heart. She was a majestic empress, but she ended up with such an end. That's all, she didn't suffer a loss anyway. If it weren't for Lu Chen, she still didn't know when she would be able to break through to the realm of transformation. And she doesn't have a Taoist companion anyway, so having one more man and one more backer wouldn't hurt. Just when Nangang Yuehua was distracted, Nangang Kinja's voice suddenly became louder and her eyes rolled up. Nangang Yuehua suddenly came back to her senses. She glanced at Nangang Kinja with disdain and said, "Shameless." Nangang Kinja took a deep breath. After a while, Nangang Kinja said, "Sister, I'm afraid you are not qualified to say that to me." Lu Chen ignored the quarrel between the two women. He gently kissed Nangang Kinja's red lips, and then pulled away. "Hey! Okay, that's it for today. Now that Xiang world has stabilized, it's time for me to go back to Tianchen world to have a look." Hearing this, Nangang Kinja quickly asked, "Who? Your Majesty, will you leave a puppet in Xiang world?" Lu Chen said, "Yes, I will. If you have anything in the future, you can tell me directly through the puppet." After Lu Chen finished speaking, Nangang Yuehua said, "Your Majesty, I'm afraid one puppet is not enough." Lu Chen asked doubtfully, "Why?" Nangang Yuehua continued, "If I leave a puppet, should this puppet stay with me or stay with Kinja?" Lu Chen understood instantly, and then he said with a smile, "When I return to Tianchen world, I will have someone help me make a few more puppets. Then you will have one puppet for each of you. That's it, let's go wash up first." Immediately afterwards, the three of them went to the bath next door and took a simple bath. After the bath, Lu Chen returned to Tianchen world with part of the Dragon War army and the spiritual stones they had collected. When he came to the crack in the boundary wall of Xiang world, Lu Chen did not immediately enter Tianchen world. He let go of his spiritual consciousness and sensed the fate of Xiang world. The luck in the Xiang world is much richer than that in the Tianchen world, but Lu Chen does not plan to absorb too much. After all, it is a low-level cultivation world. If too much luck is absorbed, it will be difficult to recover. By then, all the monks in the Xiang world will disaster. Lu Chen immediately began to absorb the luck from the Xiang world, converting all the luck into his own, and then compressed the luck into his abdomen, preparing to release it after returning to the Tianchen world. After doing all this, Lu Chen entered the world of Tianchen. The battle situation in Xiang world had long spread throughout Tianchen world. When the Dragon War army returned to Tianchen world, the leaders of almost all the major forces in Tianchen world came to greet them. The entire Tianchen world suddenly became extremely lively, and they were celebrating for half a month. After Lu Chen returned to Tianchen world, he first went to the Yanchinj palace and spent half a month to comfort his wives and concubines in Yanchinj, and then went to the Black Dragon City palace. In the cold and magnificent palace, a white-haired woman sat cross-legged on a soft couch on one side of the hall to practice. The cold air was rising in the hall, and there were layers of frost on the ground. Yun Xianxian already knew about Lu Chen's return to Tianchen world. Although Lu Chen didn't come to her immediately, she didn't care at all. She also knew that Lu Chen had many women, and it would take some time for Lu Chen to appease those wives and concubines. Yun Xianxian rarely gets jealous because of Lu Chen's ordinary wives and concubines. She is basically jealous because of her own body, Yun Qingshu. Now that Yun Qingshu has left the Tianzhen world, she no longer has a sense of crisis in her heart. In her heart, Lu Chen's ordinary wives and concubines were completely incomparable to her. If she was jealous because of those women, she would be too cheap. Now that she knows about the catastrophe of the ancient era, for her, becoming the emperor as soon as possible is what she needs to do now. Things between men and women are optional. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in the cold palace. Even though she felt the breath of that person, Yun Xianxian still did not open her eyes. She said expressionlessly, "I fed them so quickly." Hearing this, Lu Chen smiled and said, "They are all very easy to satisfy." Yun Xianxian continued to say coldly, "If you want to practice as a teacher, you should go find someone else first." Yun Xianxian also knew that she would definitely not be able to escape Lu Chen's retort, but she could change the order. There were several women in Black Dragon City, such as Su Hanyan and Chen Wanrong. As soon as Yun Xianxian finished speaking, she suddenly felt a force coming from her. Then she was pushed down on the soft couch. The next moment, a strong man's breath poured into her nose, and the spiritual power in her body instantly became restless. "Stand up!" Yun Xianxian immediately opened her beautiful eyes. End of this chapter. Chapter 811. Yun Xianxian is pregnant with a child. After much thought, Lu Chen decided to instill the fortune of the Xiang world into Yungxiangxian and help Yungxiangxian give birth to a child world. In this way, Yungxiangxian's strength could be greatly improved. Xi world is not only good for him, it is also good for the women who gave birth to Xi world. Chu Yukan and Mu Zixuan have improved very quickly because of giving birth to Xi world. Originally, Mu Zixuan was just a person with mediocre qualifications, but since giving birth to the child world, her cultivation has improved by leaps and bounds, and she is now at the 9th level of the creation realm. Yun Xiangxian's cultivation level is already very high, and her talent is also good. If she gave birth to a child world, her cultivation level should increase faster, so Lu Chen planned to give this opportunity to Yun Xianxian. After Yun Xianxian becomes stronger, she will be able to sit in Tianzhen world from now on. Even if she goes out to attack other worlds, he does not have to worry about any dangers in Tianzhen world. After being blocked by Lu Chen, Yun Xianxian did not struggle. This traitor had already taken action, so he would definitely be attacked today. Immediately, Yun Xianxian put her arms around Lu Chen's neck and actively cooperated with his kiss. As time gradually passed, the two of them got into the mood, and soon Lu Chen became busy. He continuously conveyed the luck transformed from Xiang world to Yungxiangxian. When Yungxiangxian received the luck, he instantly realized that something was wrong. In the past, Lu Chen only delivered spiritual power. After the spiritual power entered her body, it would quickly travel throughout her body and would not gather in one place. But the things Lu Chen sent to her this time actually came together and did not dissipate immediately. Yun Xianxian tried to use her Kung Fu to digest these strange powers, otherwise she would feel very uncomfortable if she held them up. However, no matter how she tried to use her Kung Fu, that special power could not be digested. A hint of emotion arose in Yun Xiangxian's heart. What kind of tricks is this traitor playing? Everything was poured into her body. After an unknown amount of time, Lu Chen finally raised his mouth. After their lips separated, Yun Xianxian quickly asked, "Hu, what is that?" Of course Lu Chen knew what Yun Xianxian was talking about. He responded while moving, "Luck." "Luck?" Yun Xianxian was slightly startled. "Can luck be compressed like this?" Yungxiangxian's starry eyes flashed with doubt. "You, give me so much luck, what are you doing?" Lu Chen leaned down and whispered in her ear, "You will know later." After the words fell, Lu Chen continued to instill luck into Yun Xianxian. Seeing that Lu Chen didn't say anything, Yun Xianxian didn't bother to ask any more. She tried a few more lucks to force the luck out of her body, but no matter what she did, the luck didn't leave, as if she was living in the house. It was the same inside her body. After an unknown amount of time, Yun Xiangxian's brain suddenly froze, and all the spiritual energy in his body gathered toward his lower abdomen. Then a strange feeling came to his heart, and then his mind went blank. After a moment of confusion, she seemed to sense something strange appearing inside her body. This. Yun Xianxian seemed to understand something. She frowned slightly, quickly raised her jade hand and pushed Lu Chen's chest. After sensing Yun Xiangxian's reaction, Lu Chen slowly raised his chest, looked down at Yun Xiangxian's jade face, and asked with a smile, "What's wrong?" Yun Xianxian asked, You made me pregnant." Yun Xianxian thought that Lu Chen had made her pregnant with a child. She heard from Lu Chen's other wives and concubines that Lu Chen could make his wives pregnant with children in just a moment. Yun Xianxian thought that Lu Chen made her pregnant with his child. Lu Chen glanced at the system prompt next to him. Congratulations to the host for helping Yun Xiangxian become pregnant with the child world, and rewarded with the sky-level formation Fixu formation. After reading the reward, Lu Chen gently scraped the hair on Yun Xiangxian's cheek. She is indeed pregnant. After hearing Lu Chen's answer, Yun Xianxian was startled, and then a hint of shame and anger appeared on her face. Why didn't you tell me in advance? She didn't particularly object to the idea of getting pregnant with Lu Chen, but she should at least talk to her about this guy. In the past, this guy said he wouldn't have a child until he became an emperor, but it didn't take long for him to have one for her. Lu Chen smiled and said, "What you are carrying is not a child." This. Yun Xianxian was stunned again. "If you are not carrying a child, what is it?" Yun Xianxian immediately sensed the condition of her body again, and the next moment, her consciousness was pulled into a black space. The black space was desolate and empty of anything, which made people feel extremely depressed. Yun Xianxian immediately realized, is this the inner universe? No, this is somewhat different from the inner universe. This space seems to have a special power feeding her back, and her cultivation has improved a lot. Not understanding what this thing was, Yun Xianxian then withdrew his consciousness, looked into Lu Chen's eyes and asked, "What is this thing?" Lu Chen did not hide any more and said directly, "This is the subworld we gave birth to together. You can also think of it as the monk's inner universe, but this inner universe is a little special. Not only can you enter, but my consciousness can also enter. And all the lives born in this subworld can be regarded as our children." Hearing this, Yun Xianxian fell into deep thought. This was the first time she heard that men and women could cultivate the inner universe. This is most likely due to Lu Chen's physical condition. This traitor really poured everything into her body. Forget it, this subworld doesn't seem to have any harm. Thinking of this, Yun Xianxian glared at Lu Chen, and then said, "You have achieved your goal, you can get up now." She figured out that Lu Chen came today just to make her pregnant with this subworld. Lu Chen smiled and said, "It's only been a short time, I still have a lot of luck to send to you." Yun Xianxian looked at this traitor with a face full of resentment. Before she could say anything, Lu Chen blocked her mouth again and began to exert force. Yun Xianxian had no way to deal with Lu Chen, so she had to let him do whatever he wanted. She had originally planned to persuade Lu Chen to practice well, focus on practice, and not always think about pleasure, but looking at this guy's appearance, he probably wouldn't listen to her words. In a blink of an eye, another half a month passed. After Lu Chen accompanied Yun Xianxian, he went to the other wives and concubines in Black Dragon City, and after confronting them all, Lu Chen returned to the Yanchinj Palace. At this time, in a courtyard of the Yanchinj Imperial Palace, Ji Kaihuyu sat in the pavilion with an angry face, looking very unhappy. She came to the Tianchen world with Lu Chen, and she thought that with her status as a concubine, she would have a place even in the Tianchen world. As a result, after her inquiries during this period of time, she realized that the lowest title in Lu Chen's harem was a concubine, which means that the status of a concubine was nothing special. Ji Kaihuyu got angry when she thought of this. She thought she was so important to Lu Chen, but now she thought that she was just one of Lu Chen's many toys. Just when Ji Kaihuyu was sulking, a voice sounded behind her. "Madam, what are you thinking about? So absorbed." End of this chapter. Chapter 812. I heard you have a few close female friends in Black Dragon City? Hearing Lu Chen's voice, Ji Kaihuyu came back to her senses instantly, and she immediately turned to look at Lu Chen behind her. At this time, Lu Chen stretched out his claws, passed through her armpits, then hugged her waist, rested his head on her shoulder, and inhaled the fragrance of her hair. Ji Kaihuyu looked at the scumbag behind him with resentment from the corner of his eyes. She thought about questioning Lu Chen before, but then she thought about it. What should she question Lu Chen? Ask Lu Chen why there are so many women? Or why the woman who asked Lu Chen had the lowest status of a noble concubine? She was just one of Lu Chen's many playthings. Let's not talk about whether she was qualified to question Lu Chen. Even if Lu Chen gave her this right, it would be meaningless. It's all just her own passion. Ji Kaihuyu then said coldly, "I heard that you still have a few confidants in Black Dragon City." Lu Chen smiled and said, "Yes, I went to Black Dragon City to serve them last month." Ji Kaihuyu snorted softly, "You can absorb the rain and dew equally and not leave anyone behind." Lu Chen said shamelessly, "They are all my women. As your husband, I will naturally not favor one over the other." Ji Kaihuyu really wanted to scold Lu Chen for being shameless, but she finally endured it. Then she continued, "I'm not used to living in this world. I want to return to Black Moon City. I wonder if your majesty will agree." Although Lu Chen's women were particularly friendly to her, and the development and living conditions of this world were better than those of Xiang world, it was precisely because of this that she had no intention of practicing after coming to this world. Tianchen world has initially entered the industrial age, especially in Yancheng. All kinds of delicious and fun things, all kinds of strange industrial products, and all kinds of beautiful clothes have deeply attracted Ji Kaihuyu. But precisely because of this, Ji Kaihuyu became worried. She had been living in such a good place, and her mind was on those worldly things, so what else could she think of cultivating there? Although the living conditions in Xiang world are not as good as Tianchen world, she can calm down and practice in Xiang world. She is also a strong woman, and she doesn't want to lose to Lu Chen's women. Lu Chen has so many women. If she is not better, then she will be just an insignificant plaything next to Lu Chen. One day, she will become a useful person beside Lu Chen. By then, Lu Chen's beautiful wives and concubines will be unable to compare with her. If you want to be useful to Lu Chen, you must become stronger. If you want to become stronger, you must focus on cultivation and not always think about pleasure. After hearing Ji Kaihuyu's request, Lu Chen asked, "Are you sure you want to return to Black Moon City?" Ji Kaihuyu said, "If your majesty is willing to let me go back, I will go back." Lu Chen said, "I have said before that I will not stop you from wherever you want to go. That is your freedom. Since you want to go back, then go back in half a year." Seeing that Lu Chen agreed, Ji Kaihuyu felt happy. After half a year, she would be able to focus on cultivation. The lifespan of immortal cultivators is relatively long, and time passes faster than ordinary people. For most cultivators, half a year passes as soon as their eyes are opened. The same was true for Lu Chen. In the next 6 months, he wandered among various wives and concubines, helping them improve their cultivation while also improving his own strength. Now the child worlds in Chu Yukan and Mu Zixuan have given birth to intelligent beings, and the intelligent beings in their bodies have established statues for Lu Chen and their respective mother goddesses. This allowed Lu Chen, Chu Yukan, and Mu Zixuan to master the power of faith, and their cultivation levels improved even faster. In half a year, Lu Chen's cultivation reached the second level of the divine transformation realm. However, after reaching the realm of divine transformation, even with the blessing of the power of faith, the speed of improvement in cultivation has dropped significantly. Now that Lu Chen is practicing dual cultivation with his wives, it is difficult for him to feel any obvious improvement in strength. Fortunately, in addition to the power of faith, there is also the original power generated by the sub-universe to help him improve his cultivation. Strangely enough, Lu Chen originally thought that the original power could only be obtained when his wives and concubines gave birth to the sub-universe. However, he did not expect that as the sub-universe continued to grow and become larger, he would actually be able to obtain a steady stream of original power. It's just that the original power of the sub-universe is still weaker than the original power directly rewarded by the system, giving people a feeling that it is not so pure, but whether it is pure or not, it can improve Lu Chen's strength. Black Dragon City Palace. Lu Chen was busy behind Qing Lang Ferry. At this time, Yun Xian Ferry let out a roar. After feeling almost done, Lu Chen lay on her shoulder and said in her ear, "Master, help me make more when you have time. A few puppets would be nice." After hearing Lu Chen's words, Yun Xian did not answer immediately. She was panting. After an unknown amount of time, she spoke, "Hey, where are the puppets I made for you before?" Lu Chen replied, "The number is too small, I need more puppets." Yun Xian asked, "Why do you need so many puppets?" "2 or 3 are enough." Lu Chen said, "I plan to give each of my wives and concubines a puppet of mine. If anything happens to you in the future, you can notify me as soon as possible." Lu Chen had asked craftsmen to make a lot of puppets that looked like him very early on, but the functions of those puppets were not very obvious, they were just like ordinary puppets. Lu Chen planned to use the latest puppet-making method to make new puppets, and then put these puppets next to his wives and concubines. If they missed him, they could talk to him through the puppets, so he could be with them all the time. Yun Xian continued to ask, "How many puppets can you control now?" Yun Xian also practiced the puppetry technique given by Lu Chen, but she can only control 3 puppets at most. If there are too many puppets, not only will the puppets have no strength, but it will also easily consume her own energy. Lu Chen replied, "If it is just about controlling puppets, I can control at least 100 puppets now, but I can only make 10 puppets have strength above the creation realm." After Lu Chen broke through to the second level of the spiritual transformation realm, the saint-level puppetry technique also went a step further. The number of puppets controlled has greatly increased, but most puppets cannot be instilled with cultivation. If there are too many puppets with cultivation, his consciousness will find it difficult to connect all the puppets. Of course, he just wanted his wives and concubines not to feel lonely, so even if his puppets did not have cultivation, it would not be a big problem. Yun Xian adjusted the restless spiritual power in her body and said, "Okay, I will make a puppet for you now. The two have been tossing and turning for so long, it's time to end it." Yun Xian is not the kind of woman who is greedy for pleasure. Lu Chen said, "Okay." As soon as the voice fell, Lu Chen gently pulled himself up from Yun Xiangxian's jade back, but just when Yun Xian also stood up, Lu Chen suddenly hugged Yun Xiangxian's waist. Yun Xian hadn't reacted yet, and she saw Lu Chen lift her hips and let her sit in his arms. Feeling the strangeness of her body, Yun Xian curled her lips, really not knowing whether this traitor did it on purpose or formed a habit. Lu Chen rested his head on Yun Xiangxian's fragrant shoulders, raised his right hand, and waved it casually, and the spiritual wood for making puppets appeared in the bedroom. End of this chapter. Chapter 813. Are you ready to leave Tianchen world? After seeing the spiritual trees piled up in the palace, Yun Xianxian immediately raised his hand and without any hesitation, began to make a puppet for Lu Chen. But while she was doing her exercises, the strangeness in her body made it difficult for her to concentrate. Yun Xianxian then stopped making the puppet, turned his head slightly, looked at Lu Chen with the corner of his eye and asked, "Can you go out? How do you ask me to make a puppet like this?" Lu Chen smiled and said, "I didn't mess around." Seeing that Lu Chen not only did not stand up, but instead hugged him tighter, Yun Xianxian had no choice but to continue trying to concentrate, and then continued to make a puppet for Lu Chen. Lu Chen did not mess around. After all, Yun Xianxian was making a puppet for himself. If he messed around at this time, he would be too annoying. In a dozen breaths, Yun Xianxian made 3 puppets for Lu Chen. Seeing the puppets that were the same size as Lu Chen in the palace, Yun Xianxian suddenly thought of something, and then said, "If it's just to make if your confidant can talk to you, there seems to be no need to make a life-size puppet." Lu Chen thought for a while and felt that it made sense. The puppets he used to give to his wives and concubines were only the size of a palm. His wives and concubines could take them with them at any time no matter where they went. There were even people who used his puppets to do dirty things. Lu Chen's heart moved slightly when he thought of when he discovered that Wang Qingkai was using his puppet to do that kind of thing. Even Yun Xianxian felt Lu Chen's reaction. Yun Xianxian asked, "What are you thinking about?" Yun Xianxian was a little puzzled. Just talking about the puppet, why did this guy get excited? The two of them were in a close state, and she could clearly feel the guy's slightest move. Lu Chen smiled and replied, "Nothing." "Then please master, please make me some palm-sized puppets." Yun Xianxian did not continue to ask, she immediately released her spiritual power, which poured into the pile of spiritual trees in the palace, and soon the spiritual trees turned into exquisite puppets. The appearance of the puppet and Lu Chen's body are basically the same, and it looks like a scaled-down version of the body. Soon, a bunch of puppets appeared in the palace. Seeing that they were almost done, Yun Xian stopped making them. Lu Chen scanned it with his spiritual consciousness and found that there were almost 300 little puppets, which was enough. He currently had less than 100 wives and concubines, so a few puppets per person would be no problem. Yun Xianxian said at this time, "Okay." Lu Chen didn't say anything. He spread his palms and condensed a ball of blood from his body. Then with a wave, the blood turned into droplets of blood and flew to the puppet's forehead. Immediately afterwards, Lu Chen felt as if he had countless more eyes. Likewise, his vision extends in all directions. After those puppets came into contact with Lu Chen's blood, they all seemed to come to life. They completely lost their wooden appearance and looked like living villains. Lu Chen then tried to control these puppets to line up in rows in the hall at the same time. Although these puppets had no cultivation level, it was the first time for Lu Chen to control so many puppets at the same time, which still consumed a lot of his energy. A feeling of exhaustion suddenly came over me. Lu Chen quickly disconnected the spiritual connection with these puppets. He did not need to maintain the spiritual connection with the entire puppet all the time. He only needed to use the spiritual connection when his wife and concubines missed him. Seeing the rows of little people on the ground, Lu Chen showed a satisfied smile. "Well, not bad, not bad." At this moment, Yun Xianxian asked, "Are you ready to leave Tianchen world?" Lu Chen waved his hand and collected all the puppets in the hall from the space ring. Now that the sub-universe has life, he can't throw everything into the sub-universe. Fortunately, he got a lot of them in the Xiang world. Space ring. After putting away the puppet, Lu Chen asked, "Why do you ask that?" Yun Xianxian continued, "You are ready to let your confidant look at your puppet body and miss you. Doesn't that mean you want to leave Tianchen world?" Lu Chen smiled faintly and then said, "I do plan to expand outwards, but I am just preparing in advance and have no intention of leaving Tianchen world immediately. Now that his cultivation speed has slowed down, if he wants to obtain more cultivation resources, he must attack other worlds, and then absorb the luck of other worlds to help his wives and concubines conceive in this world, so that he can obtain more system rewards. It will take another 100 years for the Xiang world and the Tianchen world to fully integrate. It is impossible for him to wait until the two worlds are fully integrated before attacking other worlds. Although 100 years is just the blink of an eye for a cultivator, Lu Chen's thinking is still that of an earthling. He still feels that it is too long and he cannot wait for so long. Since there is no other world hitting the Tianchen world, he will simply find other ways to go to other worlds, such as building an immortal boat or something. Hearing Lu Chen's answer, Yun Xianxian didn't say anything more. She also understood that Tianchen world was just a low-level world. The cultivation resources in this world were too few for Lu Chen, and there was no way to support Lu Chen. After cultivating to the realm of the Great Emperor, Lu Chen will definitely leave Tianchen world. Just when Yun Xianxian was distracted, Lu Chen suddenly put his arms around her waist, stood up slightly, and then pressed her under him. She was sitting on Lu Chen's body, and Lu Chen only used a little force to make her crawl on the soft couch. Master has helped me such a big favor today, and I want to repay Master well. Yun Xianxian snorted. This traitor was hopeless. Lu Chen didn't stay in Yung Xianxian's palace for too long. Nowadays, there are not many cultivation levels that can be improved by dual cultivation. Although dual cultivation does make him feel physically and mentally comfortable, his current focus should be on external expansion. After coming out of Yun Xianxian's palace, Lu Chen took the Fiheng immortal boat directly to the outside of Tianchen world. The universe is extremely dreamy, with dazzling galaxies everywhere you look, but this universe is very different from the universe Lu Chen was in before. There is no sun in this universe, and there are no planets revolving around the sun. All worlds exist independently in the universe, and the sun in each world is the sun owned by that world itself. Even if the Tianchen world and the Xiang world have collided, the suns of the two worlds are still not the same. Lu Chen stood on the roof of the Xianzhou Palace and looked at the Tianchen world and Xiang world that collided together. The gaps in the outer boundary walls created when the two worlds collided have gradually been closed. This is also the time when the two worlds are about to merge together. Signs. At this time, Lu Chen took a step forward, and his body was instantly teleported from the Fiheng immortal boat into the universe. He is already a cultivator in the realm of gods and can physically cross the void. The floating fragments of the world in the void do not pose much of a threat to him. When Lu Chen came out this time, in addition to looking for the next world to conquer, he also planned to test his strength in the God transformation realm. End of chapter. Chapter 814 Ji Kaihuyu is leaving. Tianchen world is just a low-level world, and it cannot withstand the attack of a strong man in the God transformation realm. So if you want to see how strong you are, you have to come to the void. After Lu Chen's body floated in the void, he quickly scanned the surrounding universe with his eyes, and soon his eyes fell on a huge piece of world fragments. The fragment was about 10 kilometers long, and some broken buildings could even be seen on it. It was obvious that the fragment came from a world with life. But all this was not important. The important thing was that Lu Chen found something to practice. Lu Chen then circulated the spiritual power around his body, and then raised his hand. Moving stars 10,000 swords. The next moment, countless stars appeared around Lu Chen's body, and then these starlights turned into long swords and stabbed the 10-kilometer-long world fragment. As those long swords hit the world fragment, the universe where Lu Chen was located was full of debris, and the 10-kilometer-long world fragment was directly smashed into several large pieces by those long swords. Seeing this scene, Lu Chen was slightly surprised. Is this the strength of a cultivator in the God transformation realm? No, this should be the effect of a heaven-level technique. Ordinary cultivators in the God transformation realm may not have such strength. The star-moving 10,000 swords technique was a reward Lu Chen received when he accepted Nangang Yuehua. Lu Chen was not actually very interested in this technique. He already had enough heaven-level techniques. These techniques and swords were enough for him. There was no need to practice so many techniques, so he practiced them casually and then did not take this technique seriously. I didn't expect that the technique I practiced casually would be so powerful. It is indeed a heaven-level technique. Lu Chen did not stop immediately. He once again circulated his spiritual power. Heavenly Thunder Technique. In an instant, a huge black cloud appeared in the universe. The volume of the black cloud even exceeded that of the world fragment just now. Then, countless purple lightning bolts rushed out in the black cloud, and those thick lightning bolts directly split the already shattered world fragments into countless debris. After the bombardment of the sky thunder, a dust disk appeared in the desolate universe. Seeing his masterpiece, Lu Chen nodded with satisfaction. The power of the sky thunder art was still good. There was no need to continue trying other skills. Then Lu Chen returned to the Fiheng Xianzhou, and then controlled the Fiheng Xianzhou to fly to other places. He planned to find the next world to conquer, and casually observe whether there was a world with more sound laws near the Tianchen world. After the Fiheng Xianzhou flew in the universe for a while, Lu Chen found that not far from the Tianchen world, there was a world emitting orange-red light. This world is not far from the Tianchen world, it can be regarded as a neighbor, and the most important thing is that this world is actually slowly moving towards the Tianchen world. Although this world is moving slowly, the Tianchen world is almost motionless. Sooner or later, this world will collide with the Tianchen world like the Xiang world. Lu Chen thought that it was probably because of the decline of the luck of Tianchen world that other worlds collided with Tianchen world. But this was a good thing for him. If that world could collide with Tianchen world and merge with each other, then Tianchen world would be even bigger in the future. Lu Chen continued to control the Fiheng Xianzhou to patrol around Tianchen world. After a while, he found that there was a red world and several black worlds flying towards Tianchen world almost 1 light year away. Lu Chen thought that it was indeed because of the decline of luck that so many worlds approached Tianchen world. After these worlds merged with Tianchen world, I don't know how big Tianchen world will be. The worlds close to Tianchen world are much larger than Tianchen world, and I don't know if there are many cultivators above the God transformation realm in those worlds. After circling around Tianchen world and Xiang world, Lu Chen almost confirmed the neighbors around him, and then he returned to Tianchen world. Those worlds are far away from the Tianchen world. Even if they collide with the Tianchen world, it will take hundreds or thousands of years, but he can't wait that long. Lu Chen plans to ask the Black Dragon Holy Land to send more people when he returns, and to transport more immortal boats by the way, so that he can directly use these immortal boats to attack other worlds. After returning to the Tianchen world, Lu Chen went to the Yanqing Palace. At this time, Music Xuan and a group of wives and concubines were admiring flowers in the imperial garden. The women surrounded Ji Kaiyu in the middle and seemed to be talking about something. "Sister Ji, why don't you stay? I heard from His Majesty that although the spiritual power in the Tianchen world is not as abundant as that in the Xiang world, the living conditions are better than those in the Xiang world. The current Xiang world doesn't even have electricity. Ji Kaiyu is going back to the Xiang world in the next few days." The women planned to persuade her to come down. After about half a year of getting along, their relationship has been very harmonious. Of course, Lu Chen's harem cannot be unharmonious. Ji Kaiyu was a little uncomfortable with Lu Chen having so many women, but after 6 months of getting along, she has completely changed her mind. Lu Chen's strength is too strong. Even with so many women, they may not be Lu Chen's opponent. As for the fact that they are all concubines, Ji Kaiyu doesn't think it's a big deal. This shows that Lu Chen treats his women equally, and she is the same. This proves that Lu Chen is not a person who loves new things and dislikes old things. Even if she returns to the Xiang world, Lu Chen will not forget her in the future. It is precisely because of this that she wants to become stronger and different from other women. For Lu Chen at this stage, most women can only satisfy his desires, and they are actually not of much value. Ji Kaihuyu heard that only the concubines in the Black Dragon City Palace have relatively strong cultivation, and they can really help Lu Chen. Compared with women like Mu Zixuan who gave birth to children for Lu Chen and looked after Lu Chen, Ji Kaihuyu wants to be like Yun Xianxian or the Nangong sisters who can provide great help to Lu Chen. So she has to become stronger and can't continue to degenerate. After hearing what Mu Zixuan said, Ji Kaihuyu smiled slightly. Sister Zixuan, I also want to stay in Tianchen world, but my self-discipline is too poor. If I continue to stay in Tianchen world, I will not have the heart to practice at all. Although the living conditions in Xiang world are not good, it is precisely because of this that I can calm down and practice. Hearing Ji Kaihuyu's words, Mu Zixuan sighed slightly and said, Okay, since Sister Ji wants to improve her cultivation, I won't say anything more. Mu Zixuan also understood that Ji Kaihuyu wanted to leave, most likely to avoid Lu Chen. Lu Chen would torment her every now and then, so how could she have the heart to practice? Ji Kaihuyu said with a smile, Zixuan, don't worry, I will come back to Tianchen world to take a look every 50 years at most. Hearing what Ji Kaihuyu said, Mu Zixuan was stunned for a moment. At this time, a man's voice came, Kaihuyu, Zixuan and the others have just embarked on the road of cultivation. 50 years is not a short time for them. End of this chapter. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Chapter 815 Kinja, you did a good job. Although Mu Zixuan and the others have entered the Heavenly Man realm and officially embarked on the path of cultivation, they have just embarked on this path and have not experienced much time, so their concept of time is still stuck in the concept of time of ordinary people. 50 years is almost equivalent to the life of an ordinary person. Ji Kaihuyu returned to the Tianchen world after 50 years, which was too long for Mu Zixuan and the others. After hearing Lu Chen's words, the women turned their heads to look at Lu Chen outside the pavilion. Lu Chen was wearing a white and gold long dress and a hair crown. He looked elegant and handsome. Ji Kaihuyu said at this time, 50 years is not a long time, right? Some people close their eyes for 100 years in seclusion. Lu Chen smiled and said, Zixuan and the others will not close their eyes for 100 years. For now, compared with normal cultivation, Mu Zixuan and the others and Lu Chen's dual cultivation are improving their cultivation faster, and they still have some things to do now, so it is impossible for them to close their eyes for 100 years. Ji Kaihuyu said, Okay, I'll be back in 10 years. Lu Chen said, Actually, there's no need to go through so much trouble. I'll find a way to build a teleportation array in Tianchen world and Xiang world. When there are teleportation arrays in the two worlds in the future, you can come back whenever you want. Generally, there are teleportation arrays in high-level cultivation worlds. Although teleportation arrays consume more spirit stones, their effects are still quite obvious. After hearing Lu Chen's words, Ji Kaihuyu said, Okay. At this time, Lu Chen took out a bunch of little puppets from the space ring. Those puppets floated in the air and then flew towards Mu Zixuan and the others. After the girls got the puppets, they looked here and pinched there. Zhou Yuyu said in surprise, this puppet is actually like a real person. They already had Lu Chen's puppets, but those puppets were made of wood. They were more like puppets than puppets. But the puppets Lu Chen gave them this time were different. This time, the puppets had skin and hair, and were completely a smaller version of Lu Chen's body. Lu Chen smiled faintly, then controlled the puppets in their hands and said to the girls, This is my puppet. If I go to other worlds in the future, you can talk to me through this puppet. Seeing the puppet in their hands talking, the girls were stunned again. They also knew that Lu Chen had a puppet that was almost identical to the original body, but they didn't expect Lu Chen to be able to control so many puppets at the same time. If Lu Chen makes more life-size puppets in the future, wouldn't it be? Thinking of this, Wang Qingkai's cheeks flushed slightly. Just when Wang Qingkai was thinking about it, Lu Chen's eyes suddenly looked at her. Qingkai, my consciousness is connected to this puppet, don't think of using my puppet to do bad things. Hearing this, Wang Qingkai's face became even redder. She still remembered that she had done some unspeakable things with Lu Chen's puppets. Just now, she was thinking that Lu Chen would make some life-size puppets and distribute them to them, and then they would use the life-size puppets. Wang Qingkai said guiltily, I know. After Lu Chen glanced at the women, his eyes returned to Ji Kaihuyu again. Kaihuyu, when are you going to return to Xiang World? I plan to go to Xiang World now, or you can go with me now. Ji Kaihuyu immediately said, Okay, Your Majesty, I have already prepared my things. After hearing Lu Chen's words, Music Xuan asked, When will Your Majesty come back this time? Lu Chen replied, I'm just going to see the situation in Xiang World and will be back soon, probably about 2 months. Hearing this, Ji Kaihuyu thought to herself, 2 months? Staying with Nangang Yuehua and Nangang Qinja for a month each, right? His teleportation could not shuttle between different worlds. If he wanted to return to Tianchen World from Xiang World, he still had to go through the space crack. Of course, he could also use his power to open a transmission channel directly, but there was no need to do so with the existing space crack. And there were 2 beauties in Xiang World who were waiting to be teased, so it was reasonable for him to stay there for 2 months. Music Xuan and others did not say anything more. Lu Chen immediately came to Ji Kaihuyu and hugged her waist. Seeing Lu Chen hugging her in front of so many women, Ji Kaihuyu's face was still slightly hot. Although she had already served Lu Chen with Lu Chen's other wives and concubines, she was still a little uncomfortable being stared at by so many women at the same time. Lu Chen then smiled and said to Music Xuan and the others, My ladies, wait for me to come back. The women immediately said in unison, Farewell, Your Majesty. The next moment, Lu Chen and Ji Kaihuyu disappeared on the spot, and when they appeared again, they were already at the space crack in the boundary wall of Tianchen World. Ji Kaihuyu turned her head and looked back in the direction of Yanqing. Although she had only been in Yanqing for half a year, Ji Kaihuyu had already developed a deep affection for Yanqing, especially the scenes she had experienced in the past 6 months, which kept replaying in her mind. Seeing this, Lu Chen said, If you don't want to leave, you can continue to stay in Yanqing. Ji Kaihuyu turned around and said, No need. Anyi life is indeed good, but she finally chose to practice. Seeing that Ji Kaihuyu had made up her mind to leave, Lu Chen didn't say anything more. Then Lu Chen took Ji Kaihuyu into the space crack, and soon they returned to the Black Moon City in the Xiang World. When the 2 returned to Black Moon City, the entire Black Moon City had changed a lot. Although it was only a short period of more than half a year, Black Moon City was the central city of the Immortal Alliance, and all the forces of the Immortal Alliance contributed money, effort, and manpower to carry out large-scale construction in Black Moon City. Today, Black Moon City covers a very large area, and the former City Lord's mansion has also become a magnificent Immortal Palace. When Lu Chen appeared in the Immortal Palace with Ji Kaihuyu in his arms, Nangang Qinja, who was practicing, instantly sensed Lu Chen's breath, and the next moment, Nangang Qinja appeared in front of Lu Chen. Your servant welcomes the master. Lu Chen glanced at Nangang Qinja. Nangang Qinja was wearing a dark red long skirt as before, and the split long skirt slightly revealed her snow-white long legs. Lu Chen smiled slightly and praised, Qinja, you did a good job. Nangang Qinja has made great contributions to the fact that Black Moon City has undergone such a big change in such a short time. Hearing Lu Chen's praise, Nangang Qinja was extremely excited, Thank you for the praise, Your Majesty. Lu Chen continued, Kaihuyu plans to return to Black Moon City to practice, you arrange a palace for her. Hearing this, Nangang Qinja was stunned and frowned slightly. Although the fairy palace is very large, she doesn't want other women to live with her. She originally built it specifically for Lu Chen and her. But Ji Kaiyu is Lu Chen's woman after all, so she can't say much. Then she glanced at Ji Kaiyu and said, "Come with me." After the voice fell, Nangang Kinja took Ji Kaiyu to a palace. Chapter 816 Gong Gai Liangpeng and Number 039, S. Provocation. After arranging a sleeping palace for Ji Kaiyu, Nangang Kinja couldn't wait to appear in front of Lu Chen, who was looking down at the entire Black Moon City from the sky. He thought to himself that since Black Moon City was built so quickly, there was no need to demolish it in the future. His original idea was to let the engineering team of Tianchen World bring materials to Xiang World to build the city. But now the construction of Black Moon City is nearing completion, and the houses in Black Moon City are scattered and the streets are relatively spacious. Although the number of people accommodated is not as large as a modern city, this ancient style is also very good. At this time, Nangang Kinja came to Lu Chen and whispered, "Master, are you busy now?" Hearing this, Lu Chen turned his head to look at Nangang Kinja, only to see Nangang Kinja blushing, looking like a shy little girl. Lu Chen saw through Nangang Kinja's thoughts in an instant, and then he stretched out his hand and directly pulled Nangang Kinja's delicate body into his arms. The next moment, a faint fragrance drifted into Lu Chen's nostrils, which immediately made Lu Chen restless. Lu Chen did not hesitate at all, and directly used the teleportation to come to Nangang Kinja's bedroom. As soon as he entered the bedroom, before Lu Chen did anything, Nangang Kinja leaned towards Lu Chen, and her slender hands were placed on Lu Chen's waist, and she took the initiative to undress Lu Chen. At this time, there was no need to say anything more, and both parties understood what the other was thinking. Lu Chen immediately blocked Nangang Kinja's red lips, and then laid her on the soft couch. Before he undressed, Lu Chen directly tore Nangang Kinja's red skirt into pieces. Compared with undressing, it was faster to do this. Not long after, Nangang Kinja let out a long hum sound. It must be said that Nangang Kinja's body was as soft as water. He could easily enter the state without any induction from him. At the same time, in the world of flames, in the palace inlaid with countless fiery red gems, an old man was standing in the hall, saying something with a serious look. At this moment, on the dragon throne above the hall, sat a man with his chest exposed and red lines all over his body. The man's hair and pupils were all red. When the old man in the hall finished speaking, the whole hall fell silent. The man on the dragon throne did not speak, and the old man did not dare to say anything more. The hall suddenly became extremely dull and hot, and beads of sweat kept coming out of the old man's forehead. After a long time, the man on the throne spoke, "Interesting, I thought that only our world had life in the Chaos Star Sea, but I didn't expect that there were 2 other worlds with life. But even if what you said is true, what impact does it have on me?" Hearing this question, Gong Gai Liangpeng was startled, but he quickly reacted and said, "Your Majesty, Emperor Xia is ambitious, he will definitely not be satisfied with occupying the Xiang world. After all, the Xiang world is just a low-level world with few cultivation resources. If he wants to become more powerful and make the Great Xia Dynasty more powerful, he will definitely attack other worlds. The Flame world is closest to the Tianchen world. It is very likely that the Flame world is his next target. Your Majesty must be on guard." After escaping from the Xiang world, Gong Gai Liangpeng ran to the Flame world. The entire Flame world has been unified, and there is only one dynasty, that is the Flame dynasty. And now sitting on the dragon throne is the Emperor of the Flame dynasty, Lai Haoan. Gong Gai Liangpeng didn't know whether Emperor Xia would expand abroad, but it didn't matter to him. He just wanted to make trouble for Emperor Xia. Lu Chen killed the demon of Xiang world and ruined his plan, which made him hate Lu Chen. He finally united the major forces of Xiang world and helped the demon to lift the seal and release the demon, but the demon was killed by Lu Chen. The mission failed. How can he report to his demon lord when he returns? After Gongai Liangpeng came to the world of flames through the transmission channel, he felt really uncomfortable, so he tried to get close to Emperor Lai, and then told Emperor Lai about the things in Xiang world with exaggeration, trying to let Emperor Lai send troops to attack Tianchen world to vent his anger. But Emperor Lai was obviously not so easy to fool. After hearing what Gongai Liangpeng said, Emperor Lai laughed and said, "In the Chaos Star Sea, no one can pose a threat to the flame world. Are you trying to kill someone with a borrowed knife and let me help you destroy the Tianchen world?" The expression on Gongai Liangpeng's face changed slightly. As expected of an emperor, he saw through his little thoughts at a glance. Since he was seen through, there was nothing to pretend. Then he said, "I do have some conflicts with Emperor Xia. He destroyed the Tianji pavilion and destroyed my years of hard work. Naturally, I want revenge. But for me, there is nothing to lose, but your majesty is different. If the Great Xia Dynasty grows up, it will definitely be a big worry for your majesty." After hearing what Gongai Liangpeng said, Lai Haoan pondered for a moment. What Gongai Liangpeng said made some sense. Although he didn't want to be used by others, if a cultivator in the transformation realm really appeared in the Tianchen world, it would not be a good thing for him. They are all located in the Chaos Star Sea, and most of the worlds in the Chaos Star Sea have died and collapsed, and there are very few worlds with life. If Emperor Xia really wants to expand, he has no choice, and the first choice must be the Flame world. Only by conquering and controlling the medium-sized world of Lion world can the Great Xia Dynasty have more resources and become stronger. Lai Haoan thought for a while and said, "I will send people to verify what you said. If it is true as you said, Tianchen world and Xiang world are worlds with life, and there are cultivators in the transformation realm, then you don't need to say anything more. I will also find a way to drive that transformation realm cultivator out of the Chaos Star Sea. The resources of the Chaos Star Sea are so scarce that it can't support too many transformation realm cultivators." Lai Haoan does not allow anyone to compete with him for cultivation resources. Hearing Lai Haoan's answer, Gongai Liangpeng's mouth corners slightly raised, and then saluted and said, "Then I will take my leave first. If your majesty needs me, you can call me at any time." After the voice fell, Gongai Liangpeng turned and left the hall. Looking at Gongai Liangpeng's back, Lai Haoan fell into deep thought. Tianji Pavilion? Is it the Tianji Pavilion he knows? Why did the Tianji Pavilion come to the Chaos Star Sea to set up a branch? Lai Haoan had also been to other star regions, and he had some understanding of the Tianji Pavilion. The Tianji Pavilion was a huge force, and the most important thing was that the Tianji Pavilion could open branches in any dynasty, and those dynasties would not say anything. Normally, the Tianji Pavilion would only open branches in more important worlds, or for some high-level cultivators. This was the first time he heard that the Tianji Pavilion came to the Chaos Star Sea, a place of death that even low-level cultivators were unwilling to come to open a branch. Thinking of this, Lai Haoan immediately sent a voice message to someone and said, "Bowen, come here." End of this chapter. Chapter 817. There is something strange about the Tianchen world. In the main hall, a middle-aged man wearing golden armor stood up straight. He asked in confusion, "Your Majesty, what do you want from me?" Lai Bowen is in retreat recently, trying to break into the realm of gods. If there is nothing important, Emperor Lai will probably not come to him. However, the Flame world is located in the Chaos Star Sea, and with Lai Haoan, a strong man in the God transformation realm, sitting there, nothing big may happen for thousands of years. Lai Haoan looked at Lai Bowen and said, "Recently, a monk who claimed to be from Xiang world told me that there is life in Tianchen world and Xiang world, and that a monk in Tianchen world was born in the transformation of God realm." Hearing this, Lai Bowen was startled. Tianchen world? Lai Bowen then said, "According to historical records, isn't it true that only the Flame world has life in the Chaos Star Sea? Why do other worlds also have life?" "Your Majesty, that person is not lying to you, is he? Their ancestors had already explored the world of the Chaos Star Sea. If there were other living worlds, they would have probably occupied them long ago and would not wait until others tell them now. Lai Haoan said, according to my observations, that person may indeed be a monk from a nearby world. When he came to this world, a space gate appeared in the world of flames. When monks in the 10,000 Dharma realm build a world passage, a space gate will appear in the corresponding world, and the world master of that world can discover it immediately. When Gongai Liangpeng came to the world of flames, Lai Haoan was aware of Gongai Liangpeng's existence. Gongai Liangpeng was able to open a space passage to the world of flames, which meant that there might indeed be a living world nearby. Gongai Liangpeng, a cultivator in the 10,000 Dharma realm, cannot come from a very far away world. The world passage connecting the two worlds becomes more difficult to stabilize as the distance increases. Unless Gongai Liangpeng was carrying an immortal boat, and he came to the Chaos Star Sea on an immortal boat. If Gongai Liangpeng had an immortal boat, it would prove that Gongai Liangpeng was not an ordinary monk. They are all people with immortal boats. What Gongai Liangpeng did when he came to the Death Star field like Chaos Star Sea was just because he was idle, so Lai Haoan thought that what Gongai Liangpeng said was probably true. And even if what he said is false, it doesn't matter. After all, the Chaos Star Sea is so big. It's not easy to verify whether what Gongai Liangpeng said is true or false. Just send someone over to see if it's true. Lai Bowen said at this time, Your Majesty, our ancestors have patrolled the Chaos Star Sea more than once, but they have not found any planets with life. How can life appear after only so many years? Lai Haoan said, This is not certain. Tens of thousands of years ago, space turbulence appeared near Tianchen world. Perhaps the space turbulence brought a lot of life to chaos in the Star Sea. I also observed the Tianchen world 1,000 years ago. The Tianchen world seemed to be shrouded in something, and I couldn't tell whether there was any life at all. At that time, I thought there was space turbulence, so I ignored it. You take a ferry boat and go there to have a look. If there is really life in Tianchen world, come back and tell me immediately. Seeing what Lai Haoan said, Lai Bowen said nothing more. He immediately saluted and said, Yes, Your Majesty, I will go to Tianchen world now. Lai Haoan continued, You only need to confirm whether there is life in Tianchen world and Xiang world. Remember not to alert others. If you encounter any danger, leave Tianchen world as soon as possible. Lai Bowen said, Yes, Your Majesty. Lai Haoan then waved his hand, Okay, go down and get ready. My subordinates, please leave. After finishing his words, Lai Bowen turned around and left the hall. A few days later, outside Tianchen world, an immortal boat is slowly approaching Tianchen world. At this time, Lai Bowen stood on the deck of the ferry boat, looking at the Tianchen world in the distance. Seeing that the Tianchen world was just a dark world, Lai Bowen thought in his heart that this was obviously a lifeless world. It looked like that person they really lied to His Majesty. But then again, why would that person do this? You won't get much benefit from lying to His Majesty them, and the Chaos Star Sea is so big, it's too easy to determine whether there is life in a certain world. Isn't that person afraid of angering their Majesty? Just when Lai Bowen was confused, suddenly, a soldier said, General, something is wrong. Lai Bowen asked, What's wrong? The soldier replied, There seems to be a lot of spiritual power remaining in the distance. Upon hearing this, Lai Bowen immediately released his spiritual power and briefly explored the situation in the universe. He found that, as the soldier said, there was a lot of spiritual power remaining in the universe. It seems like someone has fought in space. Could it be that there are really people in Tianchen world, but Tianchen world is black, and only planets without life are black? Lai Bowen thought for a moment and decided to move on and get closer to Tianchen world. Then he controlled the immortal boat and continued to fly towards Tianchen world. Seeing Tianchen world getting closer and closer, Suddenly, the immortal boat seemed to have encountered some barrier and suddenly became turbulent. Lai Bowen felt something was wrong and quickly said to the soldiers on the ferry boat, "Stabilize the ferry boat." After the words fell, the soldiers of the Liang army on the immortal boat simultaneously instilled spiritual power into the immortal boat and helped the immortal boat continue to move forward. During the process of advancing, the speed of the immortal boat dropped to a very low level, as if there was a ban preventing the immortal boat from approaching the Tianchen world. This made Lai Bowen frown. To be able to set up such a ban on the periphery of the Tianchen world, the person who set up the ban must be very powerful. There is indeed something strange about the Tianchen world. Time passed by minute, and finally, after an hour, their immortal boat stabilized. As the immortal boat stabilized, what came into people's eyes was no longer just a black world, but a world emitting blue light, and there was also a world emitting lavender light next to the Tianchen world. Seeing this scene, Lai Bowen and the soldiers of the Liang army present were stunned. They had always thought that there was only one world with life in the Chaos Star Sea, the Lion world, and the heavenly Dao of other worlds had died, and it was impossible for life to be born. Unexpectedly, there were two worlds with life so close to them, and it seemed that these two worlds were about to merge. When the two worlds merged, the total size would probably be as large as the Lion world. At this time, Lai Bowen's deputy general asked beside Lai Bowen, "General, do we still want to move forward?" Lai Bowen came to his senses and immediately said to the soldiers, "Return immediately. We must tell His Majesty about this as soon as possible." The matter was of great importance. Lai Bowen did not hesitate at all and directly turned the immortal boat around. His mission was to determine whether there was life in the Tianchen world. Although he did not enter the Tianchen world, he could basically judge from the restrictions just now and the color of the Tianchen world that there must be life in the Tianchen world. Not only is there life, but there is also a high probability that there are strong people. End of this chapter. Chapter 818, Spy from the Flaming World. After Lai Bowen controlled the immortal boat to return to the flame world, he came to the palace as soon as possible. At this time, Lai Howen was practicing in the practice room. When he heard the soldiers say that Lai Bowen had returned, Lai Howen came to the imperial study as soon as possible. Lai Bowen entered the imperial study and was about to salute, but Lai Howen couldn't wait to ask, "How did you find out?" Lai Bowen immediately replied, "Your Majesty, there are indeed lives in the Tianchen world and Xiang world." Hearing Lai Bowen's answer, Lai Howen frowned slightly. These two worlds have no spiritual energy, but there are humans. As soon as Lai Howen finished speaking, Lai Bowen immediately said, "There is a ban on the periphery of the Tianchen world. From a distance, the Tianchen world is a place of death without any spiritual energy. Only by passing through the ban can we see the true appearance of the Tianchen world and Xiang world." After hearing Lai Bowen's words, Lai Howen frowned immediately. "Ban? And it is a ban that can cover the two worlds? Isn't the Chaos Star Sea a place of death? How could someone come to the Chaos Star Sea to set up a ban? The person behind the scenes must be very powerful to set up a ban covering the two worlds. What exactly are there in the Tianchen world and the Xiang world? Why do they attract strong people to set up a ban?" Although he realized that the ban was set by a being more powerful than himself, this not only did not make Lai Howen feel scared, but aroused his curiosity. Being able to attract strong people to set up a ban proves that there must be something in those two worlds that the strong are interested in, maybe some magic weapon. If he can get those magic weapons, then his cultivation will definitely be able to go further. He has been trapped in the God transformation realm for tens of thousands of years, and his deadline is approaching. If there is no adventure or opportunity, then his final outcome will be like his ancestors, dying of old age in a training room. Lai Howen thought to himself that since a cultivator of the transformation realm was born in the Tianchen world, it meant that the restriction set by that great power must be something very special to protect, and that Emperor Xia broke through to the transformation realm with the things left by that great power. He himself was in the transformation realm, and he knew very well how many cultivation resources were needed to become a transformation realm cultivator. Even a medium-sized cultivation world like the Lion world could not afford to support a few transformation realm cultivators. Since there was an opportunity in the Tianchen world, he had to pay attention to the Tianchen world. Thinking of this, Lai Haoan said, "No wonder our ancestors didn't find that there are lives in Tianchen world. It turns out that it is hidden by the prohibition. Since there is a prohibition, it means that there are treasures in Tianchen world. Bowen, you immediately arrange a few first-level cultivators of the Wanfa realm and let them find a way to enter Tianchen world and find out the situation in Tianchen world." Hearing this, Lai Bowen immediately said, "Your Majesty, how about I go to Tianchen world in person?" Lai Haoan said, "Not for the time being, we don't know the situation in Tianchen world yet. If we arrange 2 strong cultivators to enter Tianchen world, it will be easy to be noticed by Emperor Xia." Lai Haoan thought to himself that since there are already cultivators in the transformation realm in Tianchen world, there should be quite a few first-level cultivators in the Wanfa realm. If a cultivator of the first level of the Wanfa realm is sent into Tianchen world, it will not be so easy to be noticed. If the strength sent out is too strong, and there are only a few strong people in Tianchen world, then the people they send out may be exposed all of a sudden, so it is better to send medium-level cultivators to avoid alerting the enemy. After hearing what Lai Haoan said, Lai Bowen immediately understood what Lai Haoan meant. "I understand, I will arrange for someone to go to Tianchen world to find out the situation." After the voice fell, Lai Bowen turned and left the imperial study. A few days passed in a blink of an eye, and a ferry boat appeared again on the periphery of Tianchen world. On the deck of the ferry boat, a man in black clothes looked at the Tianchen world emitting blue light and said in surprise, "General Lai is right, Tianchen world is really a world with life." When Zhang Chenjai received Lai Bowen's order, he was still a little bit unbelievable. After all, their ancestors had already explored the entire Chaos Star Sea. There was no other life world except the Flame world. As a result, Lai Bowen told him that he had discovered 2 life worlds. Although it was a little unbelievable, Zhang Chenjai still obeyed the order and controlled the ferry boat to come to Tianchen world. When they passed through the restriction, they really found a blue world. The presence of color means that this world has aura, and the existence of aura must have life. At this time, the man in red clothes next to Zhang Chenjai said, "I don't know which great man came to such a remote place to set up such a ban." This time, there was another Wanfa realm cultivator who followed Zhang Chenjai to Tianchen world to gather intelligence. He was the man in red clothes next to Zhang Chenjai. When Hou Yuanwei received the task, he was also a little bit unbelievable like Zhang Chenjai, until he saw the Tianchen world emitting blue light in front of him with his own eyes. Zhang Chenjai said at this time, "A place that can allow a great man to set up a ban must have countless opportunities. Maybe there may be a tomb of a saint or emperor in Tianchen world." After hearing what Zhang Chenjai said, everyone on the immortal boat instantly became energetic, breathing rapidly, and when they looked at Tianchen world, their eyes were shining. If there really is a mausoleum of a saint or an emperor, then even if they just stroll outside the mausoleum, they may get a chance. At this time, Zhang Chenjai said, "It's just that there are cultivators in the transformation realm in Tianchen world. Even if there is a mausoleum of an emperor, it is not so easy to take over Tianchen world." Hou Yuanwei said, "What are you afraid of? With the strength of our Majesty, it is not a piece of cake to take over Tianchen world." Speaking of this, Hou Yuanwei jumped off the immortal boat. "Okay, let's not talk about this. We are about to enter Tianchen world. Hurry up and put away the immortal boat. The target of the immortal boat is too big. When entering Tianchen world, it will cause huge space fluctuations and be easily exposed, so they can enter Tianchen world in the flesh." After Hou Yuanwei jumped off the immortal boat, the cultivators of the advanced team of the Flame world also jumped off the immortal boat one after another. Not long after, they successfully passed through the barrier of Tianchen world and entered Tianchen world. At the same time, Xiang World. In the Black Moon City Palace, Lu Chen was trying to assassinate Nangang Qinja. Nangang Qinja had completely lost her consciousness and kept howling. After an unknown period of time, Nangang Qinja regained some consciousness. She begged for mercy and said, "Master! Master, spare me! I'm dying." Hearing this, Lu Chen smiled and said, "It's not that easy to die." As Lu Chen finished speaking, his brain suddenly froze. His consciousness seemed to be disturbed by some mysterious consciousness. Lu Chen reacted instantly, and it should be the consciousness of the heaven in the Tianchen world. End of this chapter. Chapter 819. No need to ask, I and number 039, am already here. After the Tianchen world and the Xiang world collided, the heavenly consciousness of the two worlds also entered a state of integration. The heavenly consciousness of the Tianchen world can now enter the Xiang world to convey something to the people in the Xiang world. As Lu Chen moved his arms around Nangang Qinja's waist, a picture of several figures entering Tianquan's world suddenly appeared in his mind. Lu Chen realized at this time that this should be the consciousness of heaven in Tianchen world conveying to him the meaning of someone entering Tianchen world. Since Lu Chen became the master of Tianchen world, he has been able to easily communicate with the heavenly way of Tianchen world. The heavenly way of Tianchen world should have also understood that only by following him can Tianchen world become stronger. Lu Chen thought to himself that it seemed that monks from other worlds had also discovered Tianchen world, and he had to go back to see the situation. Thinking of this, Lu Chen's movements began to speed up. Not long after, Lu Chen exhaled a breath of turbid air, and then slowly pulled away. When he stood up and stood beside the soft couch, Nangang Qinja was lying on the soft couch, her starry eyes slightly closed and her face flushed. Seeing that Lu Chen finally let her go, Nangang Qinja felt relieved. Although she was an evil cultivator, she was not averse to this kind of thing at all, and even liked it very much. But Lu Chen's strength was too strong. Even she, an evil cultivator, couldn't bear it at all and could only beg for mercy. At this time, Lu Chen slapped her buttocks with his palm, and Nangang Qinja couldn't help but let out a cry in her mouth, "I still have something to go back to Tianchen world, so I won't go to your sister's place for the time being. If she asks, just tell her." Lu Chen rarely favors one thing over another. He originally came to Xiang world with the intention of staying with Nangang Qinja and Nangang Yuehua for a month each, but people from other worlds suddenly invaded Tianchen world. As the world lord of Tianchen world and the emperor of the Great Xia Dynasty, he had to go back and take a look no matter what. Nangang Qinja said, "Hu Nujia. I understand." Lu Chen said nothing more and turned around to go to the bath next to the palace. After a brief wash, he returned directly to Tianchen world. After entering Tianchen world, Lu Chen once again tried to communicate with the consciousness of heaven in Tianchen world. At this time, another picture appeared in his mind. In the picture, after the invaders from Tianchen world entered Tianchen world, they directly captured a small sect on the edge of the misty world, and then used soul-searching methods on the sect leader and elders of that small sect. Seeing this scene, Lu Chen went directly to the small sect without any hesitation. He was curious about which world these people were invaders from. Just as Lu Chen's figure appeared at the foot of the small sect's mountain gate, a voice sounded from behind Lu Chen, "Your Majesty, have you noticed it too?" Hearing the sound, Lu Chen turned around and saw that the person coming was Su Hanyan. Lu Chen smiled slightly, and then he said, "It's not surprising that I found out so quickly, but you, how did you notice it?" The heavenly Dao consciousness of Tianchen world recognizes him as the realm master, so the heavenly Dao consciousness will communicate with him, and he will naturally be able to detect the intruder immediately. Su Hanyan is not a realm master. The fact that she was able to detect the intruder so quickly proves that her perception is not generally strong. Su Hanyan replied, "Since the last time Swanyu Palace came to Tianchen world, I have asked people to keep an eye on the border of the mist world. When those intruders came in, the disciples of the mystic immortal sect discovered them immediately. Lu Chen smiled faintly, so that was it. It seemed that Su Hanyan had completely adapted to her identity. Lu Chen then transformed and came behind Su Hanyan, directly hugged her plump waist, then lay on her shoulder and said in her ear, "I didn't expect my wife to do this for me behind my back." Eventful. Hearing this, Su Hanyan curled his lips. This guy is really not serious at all. You should think about how to deal with the invaders from the other world. Those invaders have monks in the 10,000 Dharma realm, which means that they are probably behind. There are powerful people in the realm of gods. Obviously, those monks in the 10,000 Dharma realm are just spies of a certain force. They can send monks in the 10,000 Dharma realm as spies. No matter how behind that force, there are strong men in the God transformation realm. Lu Chen looked at the small sect in the distance and said calmly, "The soldiers are coming to cover up the water and the earth." At the same time, Phoenix Gate, Main Hall. Zhang Chenjai pinched the neck of the master of the Phoenix sect and read all the memories of the Phoenix sect using the soul-searching technique, while Hou Yuanwei used the soul-searching technique to explore the memories of the elders. After reading the memory of the master of the Phoenix sect, Zhang Chenjai threw the body of the master of the Phoenix sect on the ground, then looked at Hou Yuanwei and said, "I thought there were many strong people in this world, but I didn't expect that except for one in the God transformation realm. Other than that, they are just ants." Hou Yuanwei also threw down the corpse in his hand, and then analyzed, that Emperor Xia must have discovered a certain powerful tomb, and obtained treasures or inheritance from that powerful tomb. Otherwise, how could he still have spiritual energy? It has such great strength without a recovery stage. Zhang Chenjai said, "It's very possible. But having said that, since there is only one cultivator in the divine transformation realm, we have nothing to worry about. Hou Yuanwei, go back immediately and tell His Majesty what happened in Tianchen world. I will go to Daxia capital to find out where Emperor Xia is now." Just as Hou Yuanwei was about to leave, suddenly, a voice came from outside the hall. "No need to pry, I'm already here." Hearing this, Zhang Chenjai and others were stunned. When they saw Lu Chen and a woman slowly walking into the hall, Zhang Chenjai and Hou Yuanwei's expressions changed instantly. They had just searched other people's souls, so they knew what Lu Chen looked like. However, they never expected that Emperor Xia would appear in this place. After coming back to his senses, Zhang Chenjai said without hesitation, "Escape." As soon as the words fell, the figures of Zhang Chenjai and others disappeared on the spot, and then turned into a stream of light and flew towards the boundary wall of Tianchen world. They still have self-awareness, and they have no chance of winning against a cultivator in the realm of gods. After seeing those people running away, Lu Chen did not chase them immediately. He glanced at the information he had just identified. Name, Zhang Chenjai. Identity, Commander of the Liang Army of the Fiery Dynasty of the Fiery World. Strength, First level of 10,000 Dharma Realm. Loyalty, 0. Name, Hou Yuanwei. Identity, Commander of the Liang Army of the Fiery Dynasty of the Fiery World. Strength, First level of 10,000 Dharma Realm. Loyalty, 0. After seeing the identity of the two people, Lu Chen had no clue. Then his figure flashed, and he directly blocked the way of Zhang Chenjai and others by changing his form. Zhang Chenjai and others had not yet realized that Lu Chen could teleport anywhere in the Tianchen world. When they turned around and saw that Lu Chen had not caught up, they thought they had escaped. The next moment, a figure blocked their escape. Lu Chen said with a smile, "We are guests. I haven't entertained you properly yet. Why are you leaving in such a hurry?" End of chapter. Chapter 820, Innocent Monk from the Flaming World. Seeing Lu Chen blocking the way, Zhang Chenjai and others turned pale instantly. Zhang Chenjai reacted quickly and immediately used the method of spiritual consciousness to send a spiritual consciousness to the flame world, Seeing Zheng Chenjai's little action, Lu Chen frowned. For this method of spiritual consciousness, Lu Chen has no good way to stop it now. After the spiritual consciousness was transmitted, Zheng Chenjai said to the people around him, "There is only one cultivator in the transformation realm in the Tianchen world, Emperor Xia. Let's go together. As long as we can hold him back, His Majesty will soon send someone to rescue us." Zheng Chenjai also knew that they were not Lu Chen's opponents, but in their opinion, as long as they set up a formation to hold Emperor Xia back for a while, there would be no problem. Zheng Chenjai has already used the method of spiritual consciousness to inform Emperor Lai that the cultivator in the transformation realm can separate a soul and descend directly to other worlds. As long as they can hold back the soul of the cultivator in the transformation realm of the Flame Dynasty and wait for him to descend to the Tianchen world, it will be easy for them to escape. After hearing Zheng Chenjai's words, the cultivators of the Flame Dynasty immediately stood together. Then everyone worked together. Fiery Sun Formation. Array patterns appeared under the feet of Zheng Chenjai and others, and these array patterns quickly connected together to form a huge formation. The next moment, a tiger Dharma image appeared above the formation. Seeing this scene, Lu Chen frowned slightly. With his current strength, it would be easy to deal with Zheng Chenjai and others. With the blessing of the Holy Glory Armor, his strength has reached the Gigzu realm. Although Zheng Chenjai and his Fiery Sun Formation also has the power of the Transformation Realm, it is still not enough in front of Lu Chen, but Lu Chen cannot attack easily at this moment. If he attacks with all his strength, the Tianchen world will inevitably be destroyed. The Tianchen world is just a low-level world and cannot withstand the full force of the Transformation Realm strongmen, not to mention that Lu Chen's current strength is almost the same as that of the Gigzu realm. It seems that only that move can be used. At this time, Zheng Chenjai and others saw that Lu Chen had not taken action for a long time, and thought that Lu Chen had realized the horror of the Fiery Sun Formation, so he did not dare to attack them easily. Hou Yuanwei smiled and said, "The Fiery Sun Formation can withstand the full force of a strong man in the 5th level of the spiritual transformation realm. Emperor Xia has not made a move yet. It seems that he knows that he can't do anything to us." At this time, the morale of Zheng Chenjai and others was greatly boosted. As long as they maintained the Fiery Sun Formation, they could wait for the arrival of the Yuan Shen or clone of the spiritual transformation realm cultivator in the Flame world. Zheng Chenjai reminded at this time, "Don't be careless. Emperor Xia may want to consume us. After our spiritual power is exhausted, he will make a move." When they entered the Tianchen world, they found that the spiritual energy in the Tianchen world was very thin, and it was completely incomparable to the Flame world. In this low-level world, it is very difficult for them to replenish the lost spiritual power in their bodies in time. After hearing what Zheng Chenjai said, Hou Yuanwei said, "Don't worry, I brought a lot of high-grade spirit stones, enough for us to maintain the formation until His Majesty sends someone." Speaking of this, Hou Yuanwei immediately took out hundreds of high-grade spirit stones from the space ring, and then threw these high-grade spirit stones into the air, allowing these spirit stones to continue to provide spiritual power to the Liang formation. Seeing this scene, Lu Chen didn't care. At this time, purple light emanated from Lu Chen's pupils. Zheng Chenjai and others had been paying attention to Lu Chen's situation, and their eyes unconsciously met those purple lights. The next moment, they seemed to fall into purgatory. There were skeletons and monsters everywhere around their bodies. These skeleton monsters rushed towards them frantically. However, they were cultivators in the middle cultivation world after all, and they were knowledgeable and experienced. They reacted instantly that they had entered an illusion. Mind control is not a particularly powerful spell. Although Lu Chen is now very proficient in using mind control, it is still difficult to completely control Zheng Chenjai and others. But Lu Chen didn't need to trap them for too long. His most important purpose was to blast these people out of the Tianchen world. As long as these people were blasted out of the Tianchen world by him, he could do his best. At the moment when Zhang Chenjai and others were distracted, the Dharma image above the Liang formation instantly dissipated. Lu Chen saw this opportunity and immediately took action, directly blasting those people out of the Tianchen world with one palm. When Zhang Chenjai and others entered the universe, they instantly came out of the illusion and saw that they were in the void. Zhang Chenjai immediately took out the ferry boat and opened the protective barrier of the ferry boat. Then, Zhang Chenjai and Hou Yuanwei simultaneously controlled the ferry boat to fly at high speed in the direction of the Flame Dynasty. Seeing the ferry boat gradually going away, Lu Chen was not in a hurry. He slowly took out the sword of beheading gods from the system space and then swung it. Ice Level 8 Sword. In an instant, 8 cold rays passed through the ferry boat, and the entire ferry boat instantly broke into pieces and exploded. Seeing the wreckage of the immortal boat floating in the universe, Lu Chen couldn't help but think, these people shouldn't be dead just like that, right? He didn't use all his strength just now, he was still planning to catch 1 or 2 people to inquire about the things in the flaming world. After the immortal boat exploded, Lu Chen came to the side of the wreckage of the immortal boat as soon as possible, and at this time he really found a figure who was trying to escape. Lu Chen then waved his hand, and a huge pressure crushed the man. Hou Yuanwei's face changed drastically, and he quickly took out a small golden tower and got in. Lu Chen swung the god-slaying sword in his hand again. The god-slaying sword was a heavenly spiritual sword. Hou Yuanwei's golden tower had no resistance in front of the god-slaying sword and was instantly split in half. Lu Chen flashed and came in front of Hou Yuanwei, smiling and saying, "You can continue to run away and see if I can kill you." Hearing this, Hou Yuanwei was stunned in place for a moment. If he continued to run away, he would probably have no way out. Just now, Emperor Xia destroyed the ferry boat with one sword. His strength was obviously higher than the first level of the God Transformation Realm. Thinking of this, Hou Yuanwei said, "I am from the Flame World. If you dare to kill me, aren't you afraid of angering the Emperor?" Lu Chen laughed and said, "You Flame World have sent people to invade my Tianchen world. What's wrong with me killing you?" Speaking of this, Lu Chen released his pressure again, and Hou Yuanwei suddenly felt extremely heavy all over. Hou Yuanwei said hurriedly, I will tell you whatever you want to know, as long as you let me go." Hou Yuanwei thought to himself that Zhang Chenjai's spiritual message had been released, and it would not be long before the Flame World would send someone. As long as he could hold off and wait for the strong man in the transformation realm of the Flame World to rescue him, it would be fine. Lu Chen saw at a glance that Hou Yuanwei was stalling for time, but Lu Chen did not care too much. Then he said, "Relax your mind, answer whatever I ask you." At this point, Lu Chen's eyes emitted purple light again, and Hou Yuanwei's face changed drastically. Before Hou Yuanwei could resist, his eyes became empty, and Lu Chen asked directly, "Where is your flame world? Point me in a direction." End of this chapter. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Chapter 821 How is this possible? After hearing Lu Chen's words, Hou Yuanwei slowly raised his hand, and then pointed to the world that was 1 light-year away from Tianchen world and was emitting orange light. Looking at the world that Hou Yuanwei pointed at, Lu Chen smiled faintly. Unexpectedly, he hadn't even gone to that world to find out information, but they had sent someone over instead. But having said that, this saved him a lot of time in gathering information. Then Lu Chen continued to ask, "How many major forces are there in the Flame World? How many monks are there in the God Transformation Realm? Are there any people who have surpassed the God Transformation Realm?" "Strong." Hou Yuanwei replied expressionlessly, "The world of flames belongs to the Liang Dynasty. There are 6 monks at the God Transformation Realm. There are no strong ones above the God Transformation Realm." After hearing Hou Yuanwei's answer, Lu Chen thought to himself that since there are no strong men in the Ruins Realm, there is nothing to worry about. Now that the Nangang sisters have broken through to the Divine Transformation Realm, after putting on the Holy Glory armor, they will have the strength of the Return to Ruins realm, and the Wanfa realm monks in Tianchen world will also have the strength of the Divine Transformation realm after putting on the Holy Glory armor. With all this power combined, the Flame Dynasty has no chance of winning. The Liayan world is a medium-sized world and has far more cultivation resources than the Tianchen world. It is even possible that the Tianchen world and the Xiang world combined do not have as many resources as the Liayan world. Lu Chen continued to ask at this time, is there any magic weapon or formation in the flame world that can compete with the strong ones in the ruins realm? Hou Yuanwei replied, I don't know. Although Hou Yuanwei is a monk in the 10,000 Dharma realm, he is not an important figure in the Liayan dynasty. Naturally, he cannot know what cards the Liayan dynasty has. Lu Chen thought for a while and felt that it was almost done. Hou Yuanwei probably didn't know anything more. It would be a waste of time to continue asking. He only needed to know that the general strength of Liayan dynasty was not as good as Tianchen world. Thinking of this, Lu Chen was ready to deal with Hou Yuanwei, but at this moment, a golden light flew from the void in the distance. Lu Chen immediately raised his hand to block the sneak attack of the unknown enemy. At this time, a ball of spiritual power exploded instantly, and Lu Chen was surrounded by thick smoke. Lu Chen then waved his hand, and the smoke was directly dispersed by the spiritual power on his body. The smoke dissipated, and a monk-emitting golden light appeared in front of Lu Chen. Light! The monk said loudly, let go of the person in your hands immediately, otherwise don't blame me for being rude. Hearing the monk's threat, Lu Chen smiled faintly, but he didn't expect that Liayan dynasty would actually send someone. Lu Chen then used the system to identify the visitor's information. Name, Xiao Liangji. Identity, the clone of King Qi of the Flame Dynasty. Strength, first level of Divine Transformation Realm. Loyalty, 0. After reading the information, Lu Chen said calmly, a clone wants to take someone from me. You Liayan dynasty really don't take me seriously. Xiao Liangji's face turned dark when he heard Lu Chen calling himself I. It turned out that this person was the Xia Emperor in Zhang Chenjai's spiritual message. Xiao Liangji immediately said, Emperor Xia, I advise you not to make a mistake. Handing over our people obediently and leaving Tianchen world is your only choice. Otherwise, you will only die. Lu Chen smiled and said, a dead end? I'm very curious, who gave you the confidence? After the words fell, Hou Yuanwei in front of Lu Chen instantly turned into a ball of blood mist. Seeing that Lu Chen actually killed Hou Yuanwei in front of him, Xiao Liangji suddenly became furious. An ant from this lower world actually dared to kill someone in front of him. This he was completely ignored. Xiao Liangji stopped talking nonsense and took action directly against Lu Chen. The Flaming Phoenix Dharma. The next moment, a huge phoenix appeared above Xiao Liangji's head. As soon as the Dharma appeared, Lu Chen instantly felt that the surrounding space was extremely hot, and even the spiritual shield could not withstand it. Xiao Liangji then waved his hand, and the phoenix let out a sharp cry, and then a stream of flames spurted out from the phoenix's mouth and headed straight for Lu Chen. Lu Chen immediately tightened his grip on the god-slaying sword in his hand and slashed out with one strike. Ice 8th level sword. 8 rays of sword light flashed from Xiao Liangji's clone, and then his body shattered into several pieces like glass. Xiao Liangji's eyes suddenly showed a look of disbelief. With one move, he was defeated in one move. How can this be? At the same time, the Flame Dynasty, the Royal Palace. In the Imperial Study Room, Xiao Liangji's true form was talking to Lai Haoan. Your Majesty, please rest assured, I will definitely kill that Emperor Xia. Lai Haoan said, I am naturally at ease with King Qi work, but you should not be careless. That Emperor Xia was able to break through to the realm of God transformation in a low-level world like Tianchen world must have obtained some opportunities. After Lai Haoan finished speaking, Xiao Liangji said with a smile, even if he gets the chance, in a place with thin spiritual energy like Tianquan world, even if he breaks through to the realm of transformation, his strength will not be very strong. If you practice in a place with insufficient spiritual power for a long time, even if you achieve a breakthrough in cultivation, your strength will be difficult to match those of the same realm of monks who practice in places with abundant spiritual power. From Shaoliangji's point of view, it would not be too easy for his clone to kill a monk from the lower world. However, just as he was thinking this, he suddenly felt a sting in his heart. The next moment, Shaoliangji spurted out a mouthful of blood, and then his face showed the same expression as the clone before his death. How can this be? Seeing Shaoliangji vomiting blood, Lai Haoan frowned. He had already guessed the result even before Shaoliangji said anything. Then he said, "It seems that the strength of Emperor Xia is indeed not to be underestimated." After Shaoliangji recovered, he hurriedly said, "It's the incompetence of this old minister." Lai Haoan said nonchalantly, "It has nothing to do with you. Emperor Xia can grow up in such a low-level world, which proves that the opportunity he got must be extraordinary. The stronger his strength is, the more it proves that there must be a large number of treasures in the Tianquan world. It is no wonder that some powerful people set up restrictions outside the Tianquan world and the Xiang world." Shaoliangji asked, "I wonder what your majesty plans to do next?" Lai Haoan said, "Since there is only Emperor Xia, a cultivator in the God transformation realm in the Tianquan world, we don't have to waste time to test it. Even if Emperor Xia is strong, he can't be the opponent of 6 God transformation realms." Speaking of this, Lai Haoan immediately transmitted a voice and said, "All the cultivators in the God transformation realm should end their retreat and go to the council hall to discuss matters." Lai Haoan's voice echoed over the flame world. After hearing his voice, the cultivators in the God transformation realm in the flame world who were in retreat were very confused. In the history of the Flame Dynasty, except for the first generation of Emperor Lai who unified the flame world, he summoned the transformation realm monks. In the days that followed, the Emperor Lai never summoned them. Why did the Emperor Lai suddenly remember to summon them today? Soon, the remaining few transformation realm monks in the flame world appeared in the council hall. As the master of the flame world, no one dared to disobey Lai Haoan. After the transformation realm monks arrived, Lai Haoan stood on the dragon platform, looked down at them, and then said, "I summoned you all here because I have good news to tell you. Not far from the flame world, there are 2 low-level worlds. These 2 worlds were hidden by a certain powerful person with some kind of ban, so our ancestors never discovered that there are lives in those 2 worlds." End of this chapter. Chapter 822 Conference of Cultivators from 2 Worlds. Hearing Lai Haoan's words, the cultivators in the God transformation realm in the hall looked at each other with surprise and excitement in their eyes. Because they knew very well that the powerful being who could set up the ban to hide 2 low-level worlds must be very powerful, and it was probably done by a saint, or even a great emperor. And such a powerful being would not come to a small corner of the universe like the Chaos Star Sea to set up a ban for no reason, unless there were treasures in the Tianquan world and the Xiang world. Or there was a great emperor's tomb in that place. When they thought that there might be a great emperor's tomb in the Tianquan world, the eyes of the people in the hall radiated a fiery light. If there really is a great emperor's tomb, there are countless treasures and opportunities in it. They might be able to rely on those things to finally break through to the Gigzu realm. Whether in the middle world, the high world, or some powerful holy land, if a cultivator with poor talent and qualifications does not have enough cultivation resources or some kind of opportunity, the God transformation realm is basically the end of the general cultivator. The talents and qualifications of the several transformation realm cultivators of the Flame Dynasty, including the Emperor Lai Haoan, are not particularly good, otherwise they would not have stayed in this small corner of the universe. Now that they have seen the hope of breaking the shackles, they are naturally very happy. At this time, a transformation realm cultivator asked impatiently, "Your Majesty, when do you plan to attack the Tianquan world?" "I will gather the disciples of the sect now." Seeing that the people present were a little impatient, Lai Haoan stopped talking nonsense and said directly, I plan to go to the Tianchen world in 5 days. Although Lai Haoan did not take Lu Chen seriously, it still took some manpower to find the treasures of the Tianchen world. In Lai Haoan's opinion, if Emperor Xia escaped at that time, and only Emperor Xia knew the location of the possible tomb of the Great Emperor, it would take a lot of time for them to find that place. The more people there are, the easier it is to find. Moreover, this time when attacking the Tianchen world, Lai Haoan also planned to bring the Tianchen world and the Xiang world together under the rule of the Flame Dynasty. There are too few worlds with life in the Chaos Star Sea. The population of the fiery world is already large enough, and there are not enough resources to share. Although the two worlds are only low-level worlds, they can also share some population pressure for the fiery dynasty. After hearing Lai Haoan's words, the people present became excited again, and some even had the idea of going to the Tianchen world in advance. But at this time, Lai Haoan reminded, although the Xia Emperor is not to be feared, he is a person who may have inherited the inheritance of the Great Emperor after all. His strength is not weak. The clone of King Qi fell into his hands before. Hearing this, several people were stunned. They also heard that the emperor was warning them not to act without authorization. Seeing that several people fell into silence, Lai Haoan continued, Okay, you all go back and prepare first. After Lai Haoan's voice fell, several people saluted at the same time and said in unison, Yes, Your Majesty. Then they turned and left. After the few cultivators in the transformation realm left, Lai Haoan also issued an imperial decree and began to mobilize the army. The news of Tianchen world quickly spread throughout the entire Liayan world. After all, Liayan world had been peaceful for too long. With Li Huang, a cultivator in the God transformation realm, in charge, Liayan world had hardly fought any wars. Li Huang suddenly mobilized the army, and it was obvious that something big was going to happen. Naturally, the news of Tianchen world could not be concealed. Of course, Lai Haoan did not intend to hide it. It just so happened that some people did not want to stay in the middle cultivation world. When people knew that there were low-level cultivation worlds, many people would definitely move to Tianchen world and Xiang world, which would greatly reduce the population pressure of Liayan world. At this moment, Lu Chen also returned to Tianchen world. He directly told his wives and concubines about the Liayan dynasty through his puppet clone. Then he immediately convened a meeting of cultivators from the two worlds. Early the next morning, countless flying boats from Xiang world entered Tianchen world through the cracks between the two worlds. When the leaders of the major forces in Xiang world saw the spiritual energy of Tianchen world, they were all shocked. They originally thought that the spiritual energy of Tianchen world was more abundant than that of Xiang world, otherwise it would be impossible for a strong man like Emperor Xia to be born. Unexpectedly, the spiritual energy of Tianchen world was even thinner than that of Xiang world. With such thin spiritual energy, it was possible for a strong man in the transformation realm to be born? Could it be that Emperor Xia was not a native of Tianchen world, but came to Tianchen world from another world? Nangang Qinja and Nangang Yuehua stood at the bow of the flying boat and had the same idea as most cultivators. In a low-level world with such thin spiritual energy, Emperor Xia could break through to the transformation realm. Either his talent was against the sky, or he was not from this world. It is not impossible for cultivators from high-level worlds to come to low-level worlds for training. At this time, Nangang Yuehua and Nangang Qinja thought of the skills that Lu Chen had taken out at the same time. A person who could take out a holy level skill must have a superpower behind him. How could he be from this world? It seems that Lu Chen is most likely the son of a superpower, and he came to Tianchen world to gain experience. When thinking of Lu Chen's possible identity, Nangang Yuehua and Nangang Qinja both had a more realistic idea in their hearts. They followed the right person. Of course, even if Lu Chen was not the son of a superpower, they would not regret it in their hearts. They knew very well that they could not escape from Lu Chen's control now. Soon, the flying boats of the major forces in Xiang world arrived over Black Dragon City. The reason why Lu Chen chose Black Dragon City instead of Yancheng was that he did not trust the forces in Xiang world. Most of his wives and children were in Yancheng, and the wives and concubines in Yancheng were relatively weaker. If someone with ulterior motives entered Yancheng, it might cause some trouble to his relatives. But Black Dragon City was different. The wives and concubines in Black Dragon City were relatively strong. Even if some people in Xiang world wanted to attack them, they might not be their opponents. Lu Chen's idea was not wrong. When some cultivators in Xiang world saw that the spiritual energy in Tianchen world was thinner than that in Xiang world, they did have some contemptuous thoughts about the Great Xia Dynasty and Lu Chen. But soon those people were shocked by the strong men in the Black Dragon Holy Land. When the flying boats of the major forces in the Xiang world arrived outside the Black Dragon City, they sensed dozens of powerful auras, which far exceeded the power that the Wanfa realm cultivators could release. The cultivators in the Xiang world were immediately frightened and turned pale. Oh my god! Tianchen world actually has so many powerful people in the God transformation realm? Is this really just a low-level world? How could a low-level world with such thin spiritual energy give birth to so many powerful people in the God transformation realm? The Xia Emperor's definitely not a cultivator from this world, he must be the son of a superpower. End of this chapter. Chapter 823, with Emperor Xia here, what preparations do they need to make? In fact, Lu Chen didn't have that many strong people in the transformation realm around him, but after the Wanfa realm monks in the Black Dragon Holy Land put on the Holy Light armor, they all had the same aura as the transformation realm. Lu Chen deliberately let people release their auras in order to deter those people with ulterior motives in the Xiang world. This trick was indeed very useful. When the Wanfa realm monks wearing the Holy Light armor released their auras, the monks in the Xiang world did not dare to breathe when they entered the Black Dragon City. It was extremely quiet. They were completely sure that Emperor Xia was the son of a superpower. Even if Tianchen world was a low-level world, with Emperor Xia, it was not an ordinary low-level world. They could underestimate Tianchen world, but they absolutely could not underestimate the Great Xia Dynasty founded by Emperor Xia, let alone Emperor Xia. Lu Chen used his spiritual sense to scan the expressions of the monks in the Xiang world. After seeing their extremely solemn expressions, he knew that his deterrence had worked. Then he sent a message to the people in the Black Dragon Holy Land, asking them to restrain their auras. When the people of Xiang world felt the terrifying aura dissipate, they were sweating profusely. They instantly understood that this was actually Emperor Xia warning them not to have other ideas, otherwise it would be easy for him to kill them. After this incident, the major forces in Xiang world finally surrendered. In the council hall in Black Dragon City, Lu Chen, wearing a black and gold dragon robe, sat on a dragon chair made of gold, and glanced at the high-level leaders of the major forces in the hall. The cultivators of Xiang world and Tianchen world sat on each side, and they were all waiting for Lu Chen to speak. After a long while, Lu Chen said, "This time I convened a meeting of cultivators from the two worlds because I have an important thing to tell everyone." Hearing this, everyone was curious. Important things? What important things? Lu Chen continued, "Not far from the Tianchen world, there is a medium-sized cultivation world, and that medium-sized cultivation world has discovered the Tianchen world and the Xiang world. They will soon send people to attack the Tianchen world." When these words came out, the hall was in an uproar. Medium-sized cultivation world? There is actually a medium-sized cultivation world in the star field where they are? Aren't the cultivators in the medium-sized cultivation world very powerful? They have more spiritual energy than the lower world since birth, and the cultivation resources are much more than the lower world. The speed of cultivation is also faster than the cultivators in the lower world. The most important thing is that the upper limit of their cultivation is much higher than that of the lower world. Maybe they already have a strong man in the Gigzu realm. For a time, there was a lot of discussion in the hall. The cultivators in the medium-sized cultivation world must be very powerful. What should we do? Alas, I didn't expect another war to happen so soon. Don't worry, His Majesty is not an ordinary person. He must have a way to deal with the cultivators in that world. Lu Chen did not interrupt the discussion of those people in the hall. After a while, the cultivators in the hall saw Lu Chen sitting on the dragon throne and looking at them calmly, and they reacted one by one. Emperor Xia is so calm, and he has the power to kill the demon in one move, so it shouldn't be a big problem to deal with a medium-sized cultivation world? Thinking of this, the cultivators in the hall gradually quieted down, and their eyes all looked at Lu Chen sitting on the dragon throne. After a while, the hall was completely quiet, and Lu Chen spoke. That world is called the Flame World, which is controlled by the Flame Dynasty. According to the information I have found, the other side seems to have only about 6 transformation realm cultivators. Hearing Lu Chen's words, the cultivators in the hall were stunned. They were not shocked that there were 6 transformation realm cultivators in the Flame World. After all, the Flame World is a medium-level cultivation world, and it is normal to have 6 transformation realm cultivators. What shocked everyone present was that Emperor Xia used the word only in his words. Only 6 transformation realm cultivators? In other words, Emperor Xia did not take the Flame World seriously at all? If that's the case, then they have nothing to worry about. If Emperor Xia is really a son of a superpower who came to Tianquan world for training, then the cultivators in the medium-level world are really nothing. They just need to hold Emperor Xia's thigh. At this time, Lu Chen continued, sometimes a crisis can also be an opportunity. The fiery world is a medium-level cultivation world with abundant spiritual energy and more cultivation resources than the Tianquan world and the Xiang world. If you can defeat the fiery dynasty, you can go to the fiery world to practice in the future. With the spiritual energy and cultivation resources of the medium-level cultivation world, everyone present can break the shackles of cultivation and make further progress. After hearing what Lu Chen said, the cultivators present became excited again. Some of them have been stuck in the Wanfa realm for many years, and even the deadline is approaching. If it is really as Emperor Xia said, they can go to the medium-level cultivation world to practice, maybe they can really break the shackles and make further progress. At this time, a cultivator in the Wanfa realm stood up and said, "We in the Tianyu sect will listen to your Majesty's arrangements." Hearing this, the leaders of other forces could not stand and stood up one by one. "We in the Fiyu sect will also depend on your Majesty's arrangements. We in the Wangtian Tower will also depend on your Majesty's arrangements." After seeing all the major forces express their opinions, Lu Chen looked at Xiao Yuanjia, who was sitting in the front row on the right side of the hall, and then asked, "As for when the Flame Dynasty will attack the Tianquan world, this will trouble Xiao Iking's Sishanjian." Lu Chen believed that even if the Tianji pavilion was bad, this should still be calculated. Xiao Yuanjia hurriedly stood up and said, "Yes, Your Majesty, I will start calculating now." Xiao Yuanjia was a little excited. This was the first time that their Tianji pavilion had played a role since they surrendered to the Great Xia Dynasty. No matter what, he must accurately calculate the time of the Flame Dynasty's attack. After Xiao Yuanjia finished speaking, he began to calculate the time of the Flame Dynasty's attack on the Tianquan world. While Xiao Yuanjia was calculating the time of the Flame Dynasty's invasion, Lu Chen made other arrangements. Although it is not known when the Flame Dynasty will attack the Tianquan world for the time being, they will definitely come, so Lu Chen plans to send people to patrol around the Tianquan world first. The Two Worlds Cultivator Conference is the same as the General Cultivator Conference. Basically, Lu Chen speaks on the Dragon platform and the high-level leaders of the major forces listen below. After all, Lu Chen has absolute strength. For them, what Lu Chen said is almost like an order, and there is no room for negotiation. After a while, Xiao Yuanjia suddenly said, "Your Majesty, I have calculated the time when the Flame Dynasty will attack the Tianquan world." Hearing this, Lu Chen asked. When? Xiao Yuanjia quickly replied, if nothing unexpected happens, the flame world will attack the Tianchen world in 4 days. As soon as this was said, the people in the hall became extremely quiet. 4 days? They only have 4 days left to prepare? Soon people realized that with a strong man like Emperor Xia, what preparations do they need to make? End of this chapter. Chapter 824. There seems to be someone outside those 2 worlds. Because the flame world will attack the Tianchen world in 4 days, the first meeting of cultivators from both worlds came to an end soon, and Lu Chen asked the major forces of the 2 worlds to go back and prepare. He asked them to prepare not to let them resist the invasion of the flame world cultivators, but to let them enter the flame world together and take over the flame world. The flame world is a medium-sized cultivation world. With the size of the Great Xia Dynasty, it is still difficult to manage 3 worlds at the same time. 4 days passed in a blink of an eye, and Lu Chen personally led the cultivators of the 2 worlds to take the immortal boat into the universe, waiting for the arrival of the flame world. The Tianchen world is just a low-level world and cannot withstand the attack of the cultivators in the God transformation realm, so the battlefield must be placed in the void. When the immortal boat entered the universe, the cultivators of the 2 worlds were shocked by the brilliant starry sky. Even if many cultivators were already in the Wanfa realm, it was their first time to enter the universe. At the same time, Lai Haoan also gathered the sect leaders and elders of the major forces of the Flame Dynasty, and led more than a dozen immortal boats to move towards the Tianchen world. Although there are only a dozen immortal boats, the Flame Dynasty consumed more than half of its national strength to build these dozen immortal boats. After all, the Flame Dynasty is just a medium-sized world. If it weren't for the fact that the Flame world happened to have materials that could build immortal boats, the Flame world would not be able to build so many immortal boats. As the immortal boat gradually approached the Tianchen world, the people on the immortal boat became nervous. From a distance, the Tianchen world seemed to be just a dead world without spiritual energy. Is it really as the Emperor Lai said? Is there a ban in that world? Fortunately, the speed of the immortal boat is very fast, and it won't take long for them to verify whether all this is true. If there is really a ban, it means that there must be treasures in the Tianchen world, and this trip is worth it for them. After all, they spent a lot of spirit stones to use the immortal boat. The immortal boat belongs to the Flame Dynasty. Those forces in the Flame Dynasty must spend spirit stones if they want to use the immortal boat. Not only does it cost spirit stones to borrow the immortal boat, but even starting the immortal boat also consumes a lot of spirit stones. Objects like the immortal boat that can fly in the universe consume a large number of spiritual stones. If there are no treasures in the Tianchen world, then the forces that follow the Lian world to the Tianchen world will suffer a great loss. Just when the cultivators of the Lian world were all staring at the Tianchen world nervously, suddenly their immortal boat seemed to hit something and began to shake. However, this did not cause people to be nervous, but they became extremely excited. The ban actually exists. This means that the Emperor Lai did not lie to them. There is really a possibility that there are treasures in the Tianchen world, and it may even be the tomb of a powerful person. If they find the tomb of a powerful person, they will be able to gain something no matter what, and their trip is worth it. After feeling the immortal boat shaking, Lai Haoan calmly gave an order, steady the immortal boat and keep moving forward. As soon as Lai Haoan finished speaking, the people who controlled the immortal boat immediately infused spiritual power into the immortal boat, trying to make the immortal boat move more steadily. After a while, the vibration of the immortal boat finally became smaller. At this time, a person shouted, "Look!" The people on the immortal boat immediately looked forward to the front of the immortal boat, and saw a blue world and purple appear not far from the immortal boat. Seeing this scene, the cultivators on the immortal boat became more excited. It's true, there are other life worlds in the Chaos Star Sea. It can allow the powerful to set up restrictions, so there must be a tomb of the powerful in this Tianchen world. We are going to get rich, this trip is really not in vain. Ha ha ha, the tomb of the powerful, I don't know how many good things there are in it. However, just when people were excited, someone suddenly reminded loudly, look, there seems to be someone outside those two worlds. At this time, the people on the immortal boat came back to their senses and looked at the direction of Tianchen with all their attention. When they saw it, they were stunned. Although the distance was a bit far and the view was not very clear, they could still vaguely see a dozen small dots outside the Tianchen world. Seeing those dots, Lai Haoan frowned immediately. The perception of the cultivators in the God transformation realm was stronger. They could clearly see that those dots were immortal boats. How could Tianchen world, a low-level world, have more than a dozen immortal boats? Could it be that the materials for making immortal boats were also left by the great man who set up the ban? Or did other worlds discover Tianchen world in advance and arrive in Tianchen world before them? If cultivators from other worlds discovered Tianchen world, it would be troublesome. After all, they didn't know how strong the people who came were. If they were people from a high-level cultivation world, they might not have the treasures of Tianchen world. At this time, several other cultivators in the God transformation realm in Lian world also saw those immortal boats clearly, especially the immortal boat in front of all the immortal boats. That immortal boat was extremely luxurious, just like a palace. It was obvious that the owner of the immortal boat was not an ordinary person. At this time, Qi Wang Shaoliangji sent a voice message to Lai Haoan and asked, Your Majesty, what should we do now? Should we continue to approach? Those people parked the immortal boat outside the Tianchen world. It was obvious that they knew someone was coming, so they parked outside to prevent others from entering the Tianchen world. If they continue to move forward, there is a high probability that they will conflict with the owners of those immortal boats. But they have come here, and the treasure is right in front of them. Do they have to go back like this? Then Lai Haoan said, Keep going. Even though he guessed that the owners of those immortal boats might be particularly powerful, for the sake of opportunity, Lai Haoan still decided to take the risk. Besides, before they get close to those immortal boats, no one can say whether the owners of the immortal boats are really stronger than them. Maybe the owners of those immortal boats are from the middle-level cultivation world like them? They have the materials to make immortal boats in their Lian world, and other middle-level cultivation worlds may not have the materials to make immortal boats. And those immortal boats may be the relics left by the great powers in the Tianchen world, and the people who control those immortal boats may also be the cultivators of the Tianchen world. Lai Haoan is betting that the people on those immortal boats are cultivators of the Tianchen world. There is no doubt that Lai Haoan made the right bet, but he also miscalculated. In his opinion, if the other party is really a cultivator from the Tianchen world, it will further prove that there are treasures in the Tianchen world that can help him break free from the shackles. As the immortal boat of the Lian world kept approaching, the people on the immortal boat gradually discovered that those small dots were also immortal boats. The originally excited cultivators gradually felt a sense of crisis. When they were about to approach the immortal boat, Lai Haoan immediately gave an order, stop moving forward. Then he said to Shaoliangji, go over and ask about the situation. Yes, Your Majesty. As soon as Shaoliangji finished speaking, he left the immortal boat and flew in front of the Fiheng immortal boat. We are cultivators from the Lian world. Who are you and why are you stopping again? End of this chapter. Chapter 825 Lai Haoan, this isn't Emperor Xia either? Hearing Shaoliangji's question, Lu Chen, who was standing on the deck of the immortal boat, couldn't help laughing, and then he said, You are really a noble man who forgets things easily. I killed one of my clones a few days ago, and now you have forgotten who I am. When Lu Chen said this, Shaoliangji was stunned in the void. But he quickly reacted and laughed. They originally thought that the owners of these immortal boats came from other worlds, but they didn't expect that the people who controlled these immortal boats were actually from the Tianchen world. Shaoliangji then said, It's okay for ants not to know how to escape, but they dared to bring people to the void to wait for us. They are really looking for death. After the voice fell, Xiao Liangji immediately sent a voice message to Lai Haoan, "Your Majesty, the person who controls the immortal boat is Emperor Xia. It seems that these immortal boats are left by some powerful person." When these words came out, Lai Haoan's mouth corners slightly raised. It turned out to be a native of the Tianchen world. He just thought it was a ferry boat from a high-level cultivation world. It seems that he made the right bet. Emperor Xia placed these immortal boats outside the Tianchen world, which was obviously an empty boat plan. He must have wanted to use them to scare people from other worlds and make them think that the Tianchen world had been occupied by a higher-level cultivation world. What a pity! Emperor Xia met him. If it were other people, they might really be scared away. Thinking of this, Lai Haoan immediately sent a voice message to the people on the immortal boats, "Those immortal boats are from the Tianchen world, attack." After hearing Lai Haoan's words, the cultivators of the flame world instantly breathed a sigh of relief, and then they became more excited, with greed in their eyes. There are so many immortal boats in a low-level world like the Tianchen world, especially the immortal boat in front, which is so luxurious that it is not an ordinary immortal boat at first glance. This shows that the Tianchen world really has treasures left by the great. As long as they can occupy the Tianchen world, these things will belong to their flame world. Even if they can only share a little soup, they will be rich. After Lai Haoan's voice fell, the immortal boats of the flame world immediately continued to move towards the Tianchen world. In the battle in the void, the ordinary weapons of the Tianchen world are temporarily useless, and only the cultivators above the 8th level of the Wanfa realm can stay in the void. So most of the people on the immortal boats of both sides are just watching the show, and they can't help much. The speed of the immortal boat is very fast. It didn't take long for the immortal boats of the Liayan world to arrive at the periphery of the Tianchen world, but at this time, the immortal boats of the Liayan world did not continue to move forward. There will be a battle between the strong men of the Huashan realm next. If they get too close, the cultivators on the immortal boats are likely to be affected. As the immortal boat slowly slowed down, the cultivators above the 8th level of the Wanfa realm in the Liayan world could not wait to fly out of the immortal boat and flew directly into the void. At the same time, the people on Lu Chen's side had not moved yet. They stood on the deck of the immortal boat and quietly looked at the Wanfa realm cultivators in the void. Seeing that no cultivators from the Tianchen world came out of the immortal boat, the cultivators of the Liayan world showed contempt one by one. The enemy had already arrived, but the cultivators of the Tianchen world were still shrinking in the immortal boat. Why don't they come out? Is it because their bodies can't bear the pressure of the void? The cultivators of Tianchen world are too weak. The cultivators of Liayan world are extremely excited when they think that Tianchen world is already in their hands. At this time, Lai Haoan also flew into the void. He looked down at the magnificent ferry boat below, and then said in a voice transmission, "Ants of Tianchen world, I give you a chance, surrender to me, otherwise, die." Lai Haoan didn't plan to kill them right away. After all, he still needed people from Tianchen world to help him find the treasures of Tianchen world. In his opinion, there are so many strong people above the Wanfa realm in Liayan world, and there are also 6 cultivators in the Huashan realm. As long as he says a word, the cultivators of Tianchen world will rebel and join Liayan world. However, after Lai Haoan's words went out, he didn't see the cultivators on the ferry boat betraying Lu Chen. Lai Haoan frowned. What's going on? Could it be that these ants from the lower world think that Emperor Xia is the opponent of the flame world? Ridiculous. But ants are ants after all, and it is normal to be short-sighted. Since these people are unwilling to betray, there is nothing to say. As long as Emperor Xia is killed, those people will naturally choose to surrender. Thinking of this, Lai Haoan immediately raised his hand and waved it forward. Seeing Lai Haoan's gesture, the Wanfa realm cultivators behind Lai Haoan did not hesitate at all and rushed directly to the immortal boat of the Tianchen world. However, at this moment, a figure suddenly flew out from the immortal boat of the Tianchen world. After this figure flew out, the cultivators of the flame world in the void instantly felt a pressure. Seeing that the person coming was a cultivator of the God transformation realm, Lai Haoan laughed and said, "Are you Emperor Xia?" At this time, Xiao Liangji, who was beside Lai Haoan, frowned slightly. He knew that this person was not Emperor Xia. Now there was another cultivator of the God transformation realm, which meant that there were two cultivators of the God transformation realm in the Tianzhen world. Yin Zhenjai did not answer Lai Haoan's question. He glanced at the people in the void with an expressionless face, his eyes seemed full of disdain. Xiao Liangji immediately sent a message to Yin Zhenjai, "Your Majesty, this person is not Emperor Xia." Hearing this, Lai Haoan was stunned for a moment. He thought that there was only one Emperor Xia in Tianzhen world who was a cultivator in the God transformation realm. Since this cultivator was in the God transformation realm, this person must be Emperor Xia, but it turned out not to be him. So, there are two cultivators in the God transformation realm in Tianzhen world? Just two, it's nothing. They have 6 here, and their strength has basically reached the 5th level of the God transformation realm. It is still easy to deal with 2 cultivators in the God transformation realm from a lower world. Just when everyone was thinking this, another figure came down from a ferry boat in Tianzhen world, and that person also exuded the pressure of the God transformation realm. Lai Haoan frowned slightly. Another cultivator in the God transformation realm? Could this be Emperor Xia? Just when Lai Haoan was thinking this, Xiao Liangji sent a voice message to Lai Haoan again, "Your Majesty, this is not Emperor Xia either. There are actually 3 cultivators in the God transformation realm in a lower world like Tianzhen world? It seems that there are treasures in Tianzhen world, otherwise it would be impossible to support 3 transformation realm cultivators. But this should be the limit of Tianzhen world." Just as this thought came to Lai Haoan's mind, another cultivator from Tianzhen world suddenly came down from the immortal boat, and that person also exuded the pressure of the transformation realm. Lai Haoan thought that Emperor Xia finally came out, but at this time Xiao Liangji frowned and sent a message again, "Your Majesty, this person is not Emperor Xia either." Lai Haoan was stunned for a moment. 4 transformation realms? Before Lai Haoan could react, another transformation realm cultivator came out from Tianzhen world. This time, before Xiao Liangji could speak, Lai Haoan asked directly, "This is not Emperor Xia either." Lai Haoan's face darkened, and Xiao Liangji hesitated to speak. The person who came out this time was a female cultivator, of course it couldn't be Emperor Xia. In this way, the transformation realm cultivators in Tianzhen world are the same as those in Liayan world. Lai Haoan then thought, it's okay, even if Tianzhen world has 6 divine transformation realm cultivators, their strength is not as good as that of Liayan world. The cultivators who cultivate in a world with thin spiritual energy must be very weak. End of this chapter. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Thank you.